Good morning. Today is Tuesday, June 18, 2019. This is the regular meeting of the Lane County Board of Commissioners. We have a very long agenda going till approximately 9 p.m. tonight, so it'll be a long day. I'm not kidding. We have public comment at 9-ish, and then we have public comment again this evening over at the Willamette Lane Center. So that'll start at 5:30 p.m. in the Ken Long Room, part of Willamette Lane's facility out in East Springfield. So we have a couple of items we need to get to right away. And the first is our item 1A, the public hearing and order and resolution 19-06-18-01. This is in the matter of adopting the fiscal year 18-19 supplemental budget we have usually 4 supplemental budgets each year. And this is our last of our 4 supplemental budgets, not to be confused with our public comment, not to be confused with of the fiscal year budget that starts July 1. So we have Christine Moody, our budget and financial planning manager, award-winning, I might add, to present and go ahead and introduce this.
Thank you, Chair Sorensen, members of the board. So as was mentioned, this is the final supplemental for this fiscal year. We do this one right at the end of the fiscal year to make sure that we have appropriated any funds needed before we reach that June 30th deadline. So I have highlighted for you in the packet the summary, but I'll just highlight a few of them for you. There are some revenues that you would have heard of when we were doing the 1920 budget in the general fund, such as state marijuana revenue coming in higher, some other revenues. And so we budgeted those appropriately in 1920, but there's some adjustment to correct the 1819 final budget there. There is also some adjustments in the Parks Fund related to storm cleanup from the winter storms that we had, and then various grants and final revenues that come in throughout the year. And so departments are adjusting those at the end of the year to get them the most accurate possible. There are 3 funds that are changing by 10%. I want to note that because the notice that was published in the paper said 1 fund, but it actually turned out to be 3. So a correction there. And with that, I'm open for questions.
Any questions before we go to the public hearing on the supplemental budget? Okay. And is there anyone signed up for the supplemental? No. Okay. So at this time, we're going to open our public hearing on the supplemental budget number 4. And seeing no one has signed up, I will now close the hearing on the supplemental budget and turn to the board for action on the first item.
A question, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yep.
Ms. Moody, the amount that the adjustment in the adjustment for the storm-related damages, do you know that number off?
Well, I can tell you that that fund is adjusting by about $119,000.
$119,000. Thank you very much.
Okay. So, yeah, as mentioned, this is the last of our supplemental budgets in the current fiscal year that ends June 30th. So, seeing no other comments, I'll accept a motion to approve the resolution.
I move to approve item 1A, public hearing and order of resolution 19-06-18-01 as presented.
Second.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Buck, seconded by Commissioner Berney to approve resolution 1906-18-01. Any further comment or debate on this matter? Seeing none, we'll go to vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. The motion carries 5-0. All commissioners voting yes. Thank you, Ms. Moody. Appreciate your good work on this. We'll next go to item 6, our employee recognition. And it's my distinct privilege to introduce our county administrator, Steve Mokrahysky, and bringing up a number of our heroes. And I'll let Steve introduce the introducers and introduce the people coming up to the table.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As everyone gathers here, I'll just begin the introduction of, this is a good example of the reason that we're recognizing this team. You see, they're just, we don't have enough seats up here, so they're grabbing chairs and making it work. So a good segue here. I want to introduce our Data Heroes team members. Emily Bellinger, just raise your hand if you would so the board knows. Emily Bellinger, Community Health Nurse 2. Angel Kavanaugh, Patient Care Coordinator. Emily Christensen, Patient Care Coordinator. Ariel Cooper, Community Health Nurse 2. Christy Sears, Patient Care Coordinator.
And she isn't able to be.
She's not here. And then Susan Speidel, Patient Care Coordinator. Susan. And Sarah Salisbury, our Management Analyst in HNHS. Is Sarah.
Sarah, come on up. You're as much a data hero as this.
You're going to have to grab a chair. Well, we have one up here for you.
Here for you.
So this team comprised, as you heard, of patient care coordinators and registered nurses, initially volunteered to learn about our new Tableau data analytics software system through a series of 8 one-hour trainings to be conducted by a member of our quality and compliance improvement team. Those trainings, however, were cut short because this team didn't need all of that training. They got up to speed very quickly, and so we were able to cut short that training because they learned so quickly. And they then worked to transition and apply the Tableau reporting skills to quality improvement work. So these data heroes and the quality team led first team focused on an important laboratory value that reflects diabetes control. They quickly identified that the lab data was not being entered into the electronic medical records system consistently across the community health centers. And once they discovered this, and I think this is the important part, without any prompting from management or anyone else, they worked quickly to develop a plan, do, study, act improvement project. They worked directly with their peers to correct the problem. And they've now moved on to additional plan, do, study, act cycles to improve other ways in which care teams are working with patients to better manage their diabetes. So I thought that was a great thing. We just grab a chair, let's go, we'll make it happen. This is the kind of leadership that we talk about in our organization, that, you know, leadership, we talk oftenly that leadership is, we traditionally think about it as people who manage a large budget or have a bunch of employees that they supervise or complex projects. Leadership is really something that everyone throughout our organization has the ability to participate in when they compel others to achieve common goals. And so everyone in this group here all demonstrated leadership because of how they acted in this regard, to solve a challenge, to identify a problem, to solve a challenge, and to be creative in the implementation of that process. And it's something we met with our managers and supervisors last week, and we're talking more and more about really rethinking our role in management in this organization, that our job is to define the results and to free up our employees to identify creative and innovative solutions, to be at their best, to do exactly what this Data Hero team, which is an awesome name, by the way, the Data Hero team has done. So we want to thank this group of Data Heroes and our quality improvement team. If the board recalls, we created this quality and compliance division in HNHS in last year's budget, so it's been about just not quite a year. I think that formal division has been formulated, and the idea really was not only to deal with the compliance side, but to collect and analyze data that our teams then can use to do this type of great work to solve complex challenges and meet the needs of, in this case, our patients in the community. So I want to thank Ron and his staff, and particularly this team, for their great work, and offer if you'd like to make some additional comments.
Thank you. I just have to say, Commissioners, Commissioner Sorensen and Commissioner, how excited I am by this team and their leadership in this project. As Steve mentioned, as we put together the Quality and Compliance Division, the vision was to have a core group of individuals with training, talent, expertise, and tools that could make those tools and that training available to frontline staff who are in the best position to then take those tools and turn that into action for improvement to individual patients and then the population of patients we serve. And they have just done an exemplary job. I am so excited to have them here this morning. Sarah Salisbury on the Quality and Compliance team would be the last to raise her hand, but she's a great example of the staff from the Quality and Compliance team who worked then with the frontline clinicians to help understand the tools and some of the processes of the Plan, Do, Study, Act. And as we mentioned here, they just ran with it. You know, the curriculum and the 8-hour training is how, you know, we're good with it. Let's go and just accelerate it. And I'm delighted to see their beaming smiles. And we are just so excited. This is a great example of being able to provide that expertise and to turn people loose. And they are coming up with solutions that, quite frankly, we never would have come up with. And it's to the power of having the frontline staff do that and then take that vision to their peers. And of course, the value that they have with their peers because they do it every day is extremely powerful. So we're just very excited. Thank you all.
Okay, so how do you want to continue this recognition?
Well, we have some certificates that we'll award, and if the commissioners have any questions, otherwise we know you have a busy meeting, and
We want to make sure that we give the folks a chance to say something if they'd like, and we also want the commissioners to be able to ask some questions or make some comments. So do any of you want to say something about your life as a data hero, or how to inspire my 5-year-old granddaughter to become a data hero, or?
No.
You sure?
They're shy.
Okay. No. Okay. Well,
we try to promise not to put staff on
I saw
the-
a hand right here. I saw a hand. I saw a hand.
Ariel Cooper, registered nurse. All of us in healthcare know that data and research plays a really big role in our jobs and positions in healthcare, and I think this is a really forward-thinking project because a lot of times the data that gets driven is missing those people on the front lines, those key players in healthcare, you know, to help drive and kind of formulate what happens with that data. And so I think this is a really forward-thinking project to combine of the Health and Human Services and community health centers to create this, where they're letting us be a part of the process of how you gather and utilize data and make better healthcare outcomes.
Good, good. And what is the total number of patients now that are in the healthcare system?
We serve just under 30,000 patients last year.
I mean, that's a big number. That's like 10% of the population of Lane County gets its primary health, not public health, but primary health from the great work of the staff out there. And without the money from the federal government, we don't spend any local tax money on providing this health care to 30,000 people. Without the money from the federal government, that would not be possible. And so I just appreciate you doing the very best you can with the limited dollars we have. Go ahead, Joe.
I just want to take a moment and say as yes, I am a county commissioner for the last 5.5 months, but for the last 57 years, I've been an insulin-dependent diabetic. And for your patients who I didn't have benefit of this type of health care when I was a child, I had a 0% chance to see past the age of 25, and I normally wouldn't do this, but a 0% chance to live past the age of 30, which puts all the pressures and, you know, all the issues kind of in a proper perspective. I just want to thank you on behalf of the patients that you see. I might have avoided multiple laser photocoagulation eye surgeries if I had had benefit of this type of health care and service. I might have avoided other complications. So on a very, very personal note, void of partisanship, thank you all so much for your dedication to the patients that we have here in the county.
Any other comments from commissioners?
Here. I just want to say thank you for taking the initiative and knowing that feeling that you have the freedom to be able to do that is really important, and just applaud everything that you've done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I guess we have the recognition for folks and a photo. How you want to do that, Steve?
Well, how about a round of applause?
Yay!
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and you have to drag the chairs back. Okay, we are now ready to go to our public comment, and looks
Mr.
like,
Chair? Mr.
Yeah,
Chair,
yeah.
You missed adjustments to the agenda.
no, we're going to go to that after we finish the public comment.
Yeah.
So we're going to do the public comment, and I have 2 of 3 sheets here. I'm going to ask people to come up to the microphone, give their name. Our vice chair will give you 2 minutes to present your public comment. Okay? Is that okay?
Disagree. But
You disagree?
you're the chair.
Okay. So let's go with the public comment, and we have I have 1 of 2 sheets in front of me, and we have a third one coming. So please come up to the microphone when I call your name, and if you're next up, please come up to the chair nearest to the,
It looks like we have 3 pages, so are we sticking with 3 minutes? Or do
no,
we
2
want
minutes.
to-
I said 2
Oh,
minutes,
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
I need to,
That's okay. Yeah, our vice chair will fix the time at 2 minutes, and we will present the people. Okay, Frank Suniga?
Chair?
Yeah, go ahead.
Point of order.
Yeah, go ahead.
We really do have adjustments to agenda prior to public comment and then possible emergency business. And I believe there's going to be a request for an action under emergency business that may alter people's public testimony.
We can always change the agenda because the agenda team makes the agenda up, and then the board can override what the agenda team does. So
Yeah.
if you
Well,
want,
I'm
if
just-
you want to have any of the items ahead of public comment, that is certainly good. And by the way, you're right about emergency business. If we have emergency business, which I don't think we do, but if we have it, we probably should take it up first.
Yeah. Well, I think there's going to be a request for a piece of emergency business under adjustments. So that will have pertinence to many of the people's comments, I believe, that are here. So.
Oh, okay. Well,
We
if
do
that,
have a published agenda, which I'm looking at right now.
yeah, so why don't we go then to the adjustments to the agenda? We'll go through the items, and we'll have adjustments to the agenda, emergency business, and then public comments. And under adjustments to the agenda, I have 3. I have that Commissioner Farr will need a separate vote on item
I'll explain that, Mr.
Okay, 8D1, so we'll take that off the consent calendar, and we'll have an explanation at that time. Also, Commissioner Buck will need a separate vote on items 8B2, 8C3, and 8C4. And at that time, when we take up that separate set of items, Commissioner Buck, you can make your comments. I mentioned earlier that we're going to have the public comment this evening after this morning's public comment. And I mentioned that we will, or I haven't mentioned, but I'll mention that our board meeting will continue most of the day until about 3:30 or 4 o'clock, when we will break to go to our public comment session this evening. We may have business of the board after the public comment this evening, depending on how much work remains. We also have a continuation of our meeting. Well, I guess we're supposed to adjourn on Tuesday evening. And then on Wednesday, we've given notice that we're going to have a board meeting that should go most of the morning of Wednesday. Not on our agenda, but relevant, is our Homes for Good meeting. That's at 1:30 tomorrow here at the courthouse. Okay, so are there any other adjustments to the agenda that commissioners are aware of? Commissioner Buck?
I have one more adjustment to the agenda for item on Wednesday, 3A. As we know, we've been a little tardy on several of our reviews for our employees, and this is simply a timing issue on this one. Our HR director, who's been working really hard on getting these back on time, noted that the regular scheduled timing for this particular item is November 1st, just 4 short months away, and in order to be efficient. I would suggest that we reschedule this item to November 1st in order to start getting our performance evaluations for our employees back on schedule.
So take it off the agenda.
Yes, and
Move it
reschedule for the first week of November 1st.
Okay, so I guess we'll take that up tomorrow on whether we're doing that or not. Okay. Any other adjustments to the agenda? Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Pete. You've already mentioned my item D1, removal from the consent calendar. The reason for that is because my son is a member of AFSCME, and I will be recusing from that decision. The second is regarding last week's vote on the Association of Oregon Counties, ONC counties. The vote was 4-1. I voted in favor. And as I indicated at the time, as an affirmative vote last week, that gives me the opportunity to request a reconsideration of the very next meeting. Today is the very next meeting. I will be requesting a reconsideration of the vote, which was a 4-1 vote, to withdraw membership from Association of Oregon and California Counties. I'll make that motion during emergency business, and I will speak to the motion at the time. This has nothing to do with testimony that we're going to be receiving or have received. This is to do with a deliberative process. Thank you.
Okay. I don't really see it as an emergency because we're going to take that item up later today.
Mr. Chair, the reason I'm
70.
calling for an emergency is it needs to be a separate vote from the Budget Committee meeting, which will happen later, the budget process, which will happen later. This is a separate vote from that.
Okay. All right. Are there any other adjustments to the agenda? Okay. And item 3, emergency business. Mr. Mulcahy, is there any emergency business?
No.
Okay. Thank you. So now we'll get back to
Mr.
public.
Chair, I'm requesting an emergency business item.
What emergency is there?
The timing of my request for reconsideration.
Okay, well,
so
is
I
it
will-
okay with you if we take that up under 7A, which is the budget?
No.
No, you want to do it now? Okay. So go ahead and make a motion.
thank
See if you can reach the emergency clause
May I
of
ask,
number 3, which is emergency business, which our county administrator said there's no emergency business. Go ahead.
There's no emergency business from staff.
Okay.
From staff. The reason this is an emergency is because of the timing of the agenda that you published a week ago, Mr. Chair. And thank you for the published agenda, and thank you for sticking with it today, by the way. The emergency business is, I move to reconsider last week's 4-1 vote on withdrawal of membership fees from the budget process, from the budget document for Lane County's membership in Association of Oregon and California Counties. And if I receive a second, I will discuss the motion.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Farr to ask the board to reconsider the vote on the direction to staff to delete funding for the Lane County to provide funds to the ONC Counties Association. That motion was seconded by Commissioner Bozievich. Go ahead, Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the reason I'm making this motion is not because of testimony we have received or testimony that we will receive. And the reason that I voted yes was in order to make a reconsideration of this motion to allow for a more deliberative process. On withdrawal from AOCC, for instance, we haven't had a staff presentation. We did have to my understanding, Mr. Chair, I'm not on the agenda team. I was for 4 years, but I'm not now. That we do in the future have had a meeting scheduled where we would discuss membership fees, including AOCC and others. I believe that we should continue with that process. While the $79,000 or so that it costs annually for membership dues is a very tiny amount in view of the entire budget, the decision made to withdraw has far-reaching consequences. And it deserves more than a single vote at the board meeting that was brought up. The vote wasn't on the agenda, by the way. It was brought up without a chance for preparation of deliberation. So my point is not the benefits of Association of ONC Counties, and it's not the detriments of the association. And it's not testimony we've received in the past or will receive today. It's based upon a deliberative process. Withdrawal from membership has such far-reaching consequences, and, by the way, has a very small budgetary amount, that we need to have a more deliberative process, including staff presentation on our history with the association, and a balancing list of benefits versus the drawbacks of being a member of the association. That is the sole reason for my bringing the motion forward to reconsider, and I hope that my fellow board members will understand that a far-reaching decision of this type is not best reached by a very short discussion at a board meeting. It needs a more deliberative process, including a staff presentation.
Okay, are there any other comments on the motion? Commissioner Bozievich.
So I will be supporting the motion to reconsider, and I want to just ask one clarifying question on procedure. If the motion to reconsider passes, it does not necessarily change our withdrawal. It just says we'll have another vote on whether to withdraw or not.
Correct.
So success of this motion is not saying that we are going to withdraw from AOCC. It just says we are going to then have a separate vote on.
Well,
Puts it back on the table.
as I understand it, this motion has nothing to do with our membership in AOCC. It has to do with changing the direction to staff about the budget
Yeah. Well,
for Lane County.
but it also is a motion to reconsider a previous motion. So if my understanding of parliamentary procedure is a successful vote on this does not actually change that previous motion. It just brings it back on the table and has to have another vote.
Another vote.
So I just want to make that clear. So I'm speaking to the motion, which is to have that come back on the table, which I support also. I believe, it wasn't a noticed decision by the board, and there hasn't been a lot of clear information other than public testimony, which has been conflicting. But I also want to note that in the time between last week and this week, I've talked with the executive director and president of the association, and they've reached out to their executive team and have agreed to open a portion of their meetings to the public that would normally be open just like our meetings, with the exception of executive session type material like litigation. So, the question is are we jumping this really fast or not? I believe I agree with Commissioner Farr. There hasn't been much of a deliberative process, and I think I would suggest that we approve this motion to reconsider at this time, and then have a separate discussion and vote on whether we want to direct staff to remove this from the budget prior to having a deliberative process.
Okay, any further comments? I'll just mention that I think that it is inappropriate to use the emergency business clause in our board meetings for what I would call routine business. And by routine business, I mean where business that we could conduct at almost any time. So when the budget was proposed back in March, it included funding for the Association of ONC Counties. When the Budget Committee began reviewing the budget in April and May, by the end of the budget process, there were at least 4 proposals at the Budget Committee level to vote on whether or not the proposed budget would be changed, and then the approved budget would delete or continue the funding. Those 4 proposals to delete the funding, one of them reached the point where there was enough budget members to vote on it. It was voted on and debated. I was on the losing side, so I wasn't entirely happy about that, but the point was it was thoroughly debated, and the Budget Committee did vote, I believe, 7-2, something like that. 6-1, I believe, 6-2, to recommend and approve the funding for the Association of ONC Counties. We had a work session a week ago. The purpose of the work session was to discuss the adopted budget. Proposals were advanced by the budget director to, I would call it shore up or make more clear what money was coming in, what money was going to go out. We made those technical changes. We also had a proposal to delete the funding. That was thoroughly debated, and the board approved initially by a vote of 3-2, later by a vote of 4-1 to not. Now, I agree that we can always revisit votes, but I don't think the emergency business is the place where items that are could be debated at some other point on our agenda. So I'm just really going to disagree. And if I were on your end, because I was often on the end of not liking what the board was doing, and I always felt like one thing I could do is keep things from being voted on emergency business. And now I find it odd that here I am, the board chair, arguing that something isn't emergency business, because I really don't think it is an emergency, and I don't think it's emergency business. Now, we're going to debate the budget of Lane County later in this meeting, and if people want to make a motion like this to provide additional direction on the budget, I'm okay with that. That's part of the process. But to use emergency business, I think, is not a good idea. And quite frankly, I think if I spent the time, which I didn't, to research whether it's a point of order or not, to use emergency business, I would just say, no, you're out of order to make a motion on a regular business item under emergency business. But I didn't do that because I think we need to have the public be aware of just all of the efforts that are being made to try to reverse what the board's directed. Commissioner Berney.
I'm going to get myself in trouble. Is this much ado about nothing? Are we not going to have the opportunity to bring this up in the budget discussion and to revisit it and to be accountable to the public? Without this, we would not have the opportunity to do that later this meeting and have benefit of the input of so many people that have taken time out of their day to weigh in. That's not something we can do as opposed to make a decision before we hear from them?
It's a separate decision.
Right, but cannot.
Two different decisions. If that's a question to me, I'll
Yeah, I'm trying to understand,
No,
Pat, I apologize.
It's not something that we could debate later. This is a different discussion.
Is it a discussion that we can pull out of approving the budget and have?
I would
And vote
sooner
on
not do
again?
that, and that's why I'm making it as a separate discussion item.
Okay.
The budget, as the budget committee presented it to us, I should remain as much intact as possible. I don't want to mess with it. So that's why I'm bringing it back as a rediscussion of something that we talked about last week, which we didn't have an opportunity to talk thoroughly about, and that's why I'm suggesting a more deliberative process. And I will add this: if this is not appropriate for emergency business, I'll withdraw the motion. So I need an opinion. Is this appropriate for emergency business? Who can give me that opinion?
No, it's not your time until we get to item 5. This is item 3, but can I answer that question briefly?
Commissioner Bozievich.
So we operate loosely under Robert's rules. A motion to reconsider has to be brought up at the next business meeting. And that's, because there's the motion to reconsider has to be made by somebody that voted in the majority on the motion, either up or down, and it has to be done at the very next meeting. It seems to me it's not part of the budget item. This is a motion to reconsider and place on the table a previous. Now, the actual vote on the table, the brought back on the table, that you can choose to delay that till later in the meeting if you wish, Chair. But I think the motion to reconsider is appropriate early on in the meeting as part of emergency business, because it needs to be done as a separate item and almost immediately to make sure it gets placed back on the table.
I said it would be brought up under A, 7A, and Commissioner Farr said he'd like to consider it emergency business. So, you just mentioned that it should be brought up at the next business meeting, and it will be brought up at the next business meeting if you allow me to get to that point on this meeting's agenda.
The motion to reconsider could have been made any time you recognize Commissioner Farr, and it's considered a priority motion. So whether he did it, you recognize Commissioner Farr, he made the motion, it got a
Is there
second.
any more comment on the motion to reconsider?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Commissioner Buck,
No,
Berney.
First and foremost, I want every one of my fellow commissioners, whom I respect greatly, and you know that. I want to vote, I definitely want to bring up, as we look at the budget, this item again. And I definitely I know that Commissioner Farr is going to move, or already has, to revisit it. I'm prepared for that. In the Budget Committee, did not like the idea that elected officials, I'm not saying we intended to, but elected officials could hide behind a citizen and elected official body. So I voted to move this particular item forward in the budget proposed to county commissioners. So we could have and do exactly what Commissioner Farr has just requested that we do again. And I have no problem with that at all. I think it will be brought up in the context of our business. I think you've heard that I, at least for one, would be a third vote, which is going to look at reconsidering this. But there's no way in the world I want to do that until I respect those people that have given of their time and their days to provide input to us. As simple as that.
Okay, is there any more comments on the motion as presented? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no.
No?
No. The motion carries 3-2, Commissioners Buck and Sorensen voting no. So we'll take that item up. Is it okay with you, Commissioner Farr, that we take it up when we are discussing the budget?
At your discretion, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we'll take that up then when we are going to discuss the budget. So at this time, we will go on to public comment. I have 2 of 3 sheets here. We're going to ask our vice chair to set the timer at 2 minutes. We're going to start with Mr. Frank Siniga. Please give your name and address and tell us why you're here and what you're talking about. You'll give a total of 2 minutes, followed by Michael Dickinson, followed by Mark Witzel. So welcome, sir.
Hi. It's good to be here to see you folks and talk to you about a situation that we have in Florence, Oregon, which it's the Collar Lake Road. Quite a bit about this by now. I was raised in Florence, Oregon. I now live in Salem. And it's an exciting situation to see the changes that have taken place in Florence. I was a diver for quite a few years and worked up and down that river pulling bodies out and automobiles. And I could name the bodies, the amount, but I'm not going to do it. I'll get into this situation here. Collard Lake Road, we've owned property there for 41 years. We've seen Sutton Lake being taken care of there several years back. Some of you probably know this. Those that are new do not know Collard Lake, Collard Lake subdivision. It's a huge subdivision that several hundreds or $1 million were used to develop those roads in there, and I owned property there at one time. Now my property off Collard Lake Road has got some serious problems, which you know of. There's been 2 incidents there. One elderly lady that run off the road, and if it hadn't been for 2 trees, she'd have been about 120 yards down the canyon, dead. We had another incident last year, which run a car because of the narrowness and the problems on that road that run off the road. Luckily, a tree stopped her.
Thank you so much for your public comment today.
Okay, thank you,
All right,
sir.
really appreciate it.
Now, we need some help. that we've needed it for a long time, and you know about it. We've had 4 or 5 meetings down there in Florence over the years. Nothing has ever been done. We
Thank you.
paid
We're-
millions
we're
of dollars.
taking that up on our meeting today. Thank you so much for your public comment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is my 2 minutes up?
Yep, your 2 minutes is up. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm sorry that you didn't give us all more time, sir. You took up a lot of the business, which shouldn't have been done here. I agree with you, sir.
I agree.
This is politics,
Yeah.
and that is not good.
Okay, thank you so much. Michael Dickinson, followed by Mark Witzel, followed by Dorothy Atneve.
Thank you. Chair Sorensen and Commissioners, I'm Michael Dickinson of unincorporated Cottage Grove. I'm here today to talk about community rights ballot measures. The people of our community have been working to end aerial spraying practices for decades, and now we need you to refer our measures to the 2020 ballot. Living in rural Lane County, I've seen my neighbors and friends sickened by the harmful practices of spraying. And the worst part is, they can't do anything about it. My family raises chickens and ducks, and when timber companies spray near us, there's no place to put our livestock where they'll be safe from drift. So now, what have you done to protect us from this harm? And what will you do to protect us? And if you will do nothing, then at least let us protect ourselves. Our volunteers have collected 30,000 signatures already, so we should have been on the 2018 ballot, but that didn't happen, did it? So now our only option is for you to refer our measures to the ballot. So I urge you to please start work with us in a joint work session where we're on equal footing. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Dickinson. Mark Witzel, Dorothy Atneve, Timothy Inglesby.
Commissioner, I have six comments.
Thank you.
My name's Mark Wetzel. I live off of Collard Lake Road. First, I want to thank Commissioner Bozievich, my representative, and the other commissioners who have taken up interest in the issue of local access roads and Collard Lake Road in particular. You know the history of the several occasions that residents have tried to have the county take Collard Lake Road as a county road, so I won't review that. But I do want to request you that you move quickly to try to accept Collard Lake Road in particular as a county road before a comprehensive plan may be adopted or may not be adopted. And in the interim, if it's a long-term issue and plan, that you allocate funds and resources to repair the problems that Public Works has identified on the road. For me in particular, I'm wearing a mask because I'm a double lung transplant recipient, and it's really a health and public safety issue for me, in that there are occasions where I have to get to the ER, or EMTs may have to get to me on that road, and I really want to make sure that Collard Lake Road is maintained as a safe and reliable access to get in and out. The community growth is actually happening in Florence, and there are new homes that are proposed or actually in development, and the county has approved them or will approve them or likely to approve them. So that growth is incumbent upon the county to take some accountability and responsibility for allowing that development. And the development's good for the viability and health of the community. I support that, but the road as an LAR has that issue. Also, I think there is a fairness and justice issue with local access roads in general, in that if it's a private road, I understand that I'm responsible to maintain it, but I control a lot of the access to that road. And I can assess fees on those who may do damage if it's industrial or other heavy equipment to maintain that road. I pay taxes for public roads, of which all the public has access, but local access roads, we get no funding unless it's an emergency or designated by you commissioners.
And thank you very much for your
I can't control the access, okay, but please do read the rest for that.
Thank you so much. Okay, Dorothy Atneve, Timothy Inglesby, Michael Atkinson. Oh, wait, did you sign up twice, Mr. Atkinson? No. Okay, there's another Michael. Okay, so please state your name, and we'll start the timer for 2 minutes. Welcome.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Dorothy Atneve. I have property at 6050 Collard Lake Way. It's right off of Collard Lake Road. I listened to the online discussion about Collard Lake Way at your May 21st meeting and was very encouraged to hear that funding was approved for emergency maintenance of Collard Lake Road, because there are at least a couple of emergencies there right now. In one place between Collard Lake Loop and Collard Lake Way, a tree at the edge of the road has fallen over and its root ball tipped up, taking a section of the road with it and creating a hole a couple of feet deep and well into the driving lane. This is a bad accident waiting to happen. So thank you for the emergency funding, the Band-Aid. But the fact is that without ongoing maintenance, there are quite a few similar emergencies well on their way to taking place along Collard Lake Road. You don't need me to tell you that regular preventive maintenance is going to save money in the long run, as well as prevent dangerous road conditions from recurring where a lot of citizens drive back and forth daily. For dwellings along Collard Lake Road, Collard Lake Loop, and Collard Lake Way, Collard Lake Road is the main way in and out, for many the only way in and out, for every day and also in case of an emergency. If there ever needs to be an evacuation of this area, Collard Lake Road is the lifeline for many lots along the many lots the county has been approving over the last 40 years, while the status of this road has remained pending. Collard Lake Road is not some little gravel lane running back to one or two farmhouses. At last month's meeting, Commissioner Bozievich mentioned 128 residential lots approved so far. There are more and more houses planned and under construction right this minute. It's just good sense for the county to complete the process begun in 1976, make Collard Lake Road a county road, and bring it under regular maintenance before it sustains further damage. Thank you. Thank you.
Timothy Inglesby, Michael Arthurson? Atkinson. Oh, Atkinson, okay. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Timothy Inglesby. I've been a resident of Lane County for 40 years. I'm a certified senior wildland fire ecologist, and I'm the executive director of a national nonprofit based here in Eugene, Oregon called Firefighters United for Safety, Ethics, and Ecology. And I support the board's motion to withdraw funding from the AOCC. I urge you to make that official. I'm here to convey a message from the wildland fire management community that you won't hear from the timber shop or resource management agencies or elected officials allied to the timber industry. You definitely won't hear this from the AOCC. But fire scientists and managers know that industrial forestry is unsustainable and cannot continue. We've known that for decades in terms of its impacts on soils, water quality, biodiversity, many other vital natural resources and ecosystem services. But above all, the bottom line is industrial forestry is not sustainable on account of wildland fire. The industrial model of clear cutting followed by plantations and whatever euphemism, marketing purposes that they call clear cuts, plantations highly vulnerable to wildland fire. And when you clear cut and then have a clear cut and steep slopes, stock it up with young trees, it's wiped out by fire. It vastly increases fire risk and fuel hazards, and it just cannot continue. Many of these plantations we built today will be stranded assets tomorrow when wildfires wipe them out before they reach, market. So many analogies could be drawn between the fossil fuel industry, which deals in dead carbon, the timber industry deals with living carbon. In either case, it just cannot continue this way. So I urge you to withdraw your funding from the AOCC.
Thank you for your public comment. Okay, Michael Atkinson. I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name.
I didn't write it very well.
So we'll have you present 2 minutes of public comment, and welcome.
Thank you. Michael Atkinson. Yes, I'm a forester. Have been for 58 years. Have a piece of property of my own. I've been retired now for a while from my former employment. Been around the woods for a long time, probably 58 years. Do I know something about it? I think so. And unfortunately, I'm following someone who just got through trashing everything that I have done and will do. I think he's misled. We have been living off of a second growth economy since sometime in the late 80s. Gosh, is this unsustainable? I don't know. What's unsustainable is the forests, the old forests that people want to preserve. Look at Glendale, who's shutting down their mill, absolutely awash with timber, O&C timber, surrounding it. And they can't touch it. And they've had fires and fires. 80% of the fires in the last 10 years have been on the federal government, most of it in old growth forest. That should make a statement. Anyway, I am in favor of us staying in AOCC, and I'm sorry that some of the commissioners voted to the contrary. I see that as almost fiscal irresponsibility, but perhaps it's not over yet, and that I'll live with that. Commissioner Bozievich at the Budget Committee meeting admirably described what is going on with AOCC and has gone on for 80 years and is dealing with the Cascade-Siskiyou National Monument, which has been made a whole lot of something where the federal government stepped in and did what they shouldn't have done. AOCC's part is to try and keep the federal government on track.
Thank you for your public comments.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. I've been on a school board for 15 years. I've been in your place.
Thank you. Carol Partridge, Sue Craig, Sue Hartman.
Hello, my name is Carolyn Partridge. I live in South Eugene, and I'm here to ask that you withdraw Lane County from the AOCC. Regardless of its original intent, AOCC has become a shill for the timber industry. This is demonstrated by their lobbying and litigation efforts to open public lands to commercial logging. I'm speaking of the Cascade-Siskiyou National Monument. They have also testified and lobbied before Congress to exempt logging projects up to 45 square miles in size from environmental analysis and citizen oversight. I don't ever want my tax dollars to go towards denying citizen input on large-scale projects. The bigger picture is this. We cannot continue to extract resources from the earth at the same rate as we have in the past. The heyday for timber harvesting is over. When we clear-cut forests, we are mining the forest soils. There is an immense amount of erosion following clear-cuts, plus the fact that no organic material is decomposing to rebuild soil fertility. So far, we have been able to replant and grow second and even third crops. To think this can go on forever and ever at the present rate is magical thinking. The great challenge before us all is to find ways to provide for ourselves and our children without exceeding the bounty of the earth. AOCC runs counter to this. Please withdraw.
Thank you for your public comment. Sue Craig, Sue Hartman, Madeline Cowan. Welcome, Ms. Craig.
Thank you, and thank you for hearing us again. My name is Sue Craig, and I'm in Commissioner Bozievich's area. I would like you to withdraw from AOCC. You recently, over the past week, were inundated with a great number of emails, as I understand it, hoping to keep us in that group. That will let you know what a lobby group this is. And if you support that kind of thing, I'm wondering if you wouldn't let us start a different lobby group that would respect what we have been talking about here today, that would be supported by our tax dollars to look after our forest, to look after our soil, and to give us clean air and not be sprayed all over the place. So thank you very much. I would be interested in developing that kind of a lobby group that was paid for by our tax dollars. Thank you.
Thank you. Sue Hartman, followed by Madeline Cowan, followed by Gail Culbertson.
Hi. I was born and raised in Eugene and moved to Springfield, and I'm glad Berney is our new commissioner. I think it's great. And I would like you to withdraw from the AOCC because I think the clear cutting and all that has been happening is getting to be something we shouldn't be doing. We should be worried about our environment. I believe in more clean energy, and Berney can help you with that. And that's would bring jobs into Lane County, better jobs, and the possibility of Hynex, Hyundai, whatever you want to call it, is available. That might be the perfect place to make solar panels. And I think we need to work on programs of, doing solar in our homes, our businesses, and letting the logging pretty much, go and not have so much. We may have to do some, but I think we need to monitor it and make sure they thin cut if they do have to cut and eliminate clear cutting. Clear cutting, those little trees they put are like little gas cans, and they just can burn. You know how Christmas trees can burn in a fireplace. I'm sure you've all seen that on TV. So I think we need to pretty much stop cutting so much and look at the clean energy and do it. Why's doing it? They're doing it so well, they're actually telling people to slow down and not do so much of it over in Hawaii. But I think we need to look at that hard, very hard. And I live off 69th over in Thurston area, and I'm also concerned about those Thurston Hills being clear cut and shotgun. Those are all recreational land that the people should be enjoying, not having to worry about forest fires. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your public comment. Madeline Cowan, followed by Gail Culbertson, followed by Gordon Culbertson.
Hello, my name is Madeline Cowan. I grew up in Washington, but I've been living in Oregon for the last 5 years, and I intend on staying here for a lot longer. I pay taxes in Lane County. I'm 23 years old, and I don't make a lot of money, you mentioned earlier, Commissioner Farr, that this $78,000 or so that goes to the AOCC seems insignificant, but it is significant because that money is going towards clear cutting our public lands, and it's irresponsible, especially in the face of the climate crisis. The shot cash timber sale is something that is nearby, and if it goes through, it will increase the fire risk, and we need to keep our trees in the ground so that we can defend against climate change. Thank you.
Thank you. Gail Culbertson, followed by Gordon Culbertson.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Gail Culbertson. I live at 39074 Easton Lane in Springfield. I'm a lifelong resident of Lane County, born and raised, went to schools here. I'm here to ask that you continue Lane County's membership in the AOCC. This organization was formed specifically to ensure that those ONC lands are managed in ways that yield the greatest benefits to the county and its residents, and I believe the push to withdraw from AOCC comes from well-financed political activists who have the goal of stopping all logging on public lands, and this would be a grave disservice to us all in Lane County, and I don't appreciate the tittering. Our family owns 2 small certified tree farms that we manage on a sustained yield basis, one in Lane County, the other in Douglas, both bordered by BLM land. The management of those lands impacts us directly. So we have a very vested interest in good management practices of these lands. And we don't believe that's being done when there's a hands-off approach to these lands. Tree mortality, invasive species, insect infestation, fire potential, all are concerns that we have. Lane County should have an advocate giving voice to sustained yield management of these ONC forests as required by federal law. I've heard one of the objections to the AOCC is that they're not transparent enough. If you have such an objection, work for a solution within that organization to change their bylaws rather than abruptly ending a decades-long affiliation with an organization that works to benefit our county. I ask that you keep our membership in the AOCC. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your public comment. Gordon Culbertson, Vannie Mickelson, Kay King. Welcome, Mr. Culbertson.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Gordon Culbertson. I live out at Walterville. I'm here today representing 3 generations of family forest owners. Wise and careful management of BLM lands are important to us as they are our neighbors on our small woodlands. We support Lane County's membership in the Association of ONC Counties. AOCC has been a leader to protect the ONC receipts promised to Western Oregon counties nearly a century ago. Senator Wyden and Representative DeFazio recognize and collaborate with AOCC on secure rural schools legislation in Washington, D.C. As rural residents, we have witnessed the insecurity of schools and services in our small communities as budgets have tightened with the loss of ONC funding. It's with great sadness Latham School near Cottage Grove closed for the last time at the end of this school year. This is just the latest example of the fraying of the fabric of rural communities with the closing of a beloved school attended by generations. We are speaking out today in support of our rural communities. AOCC supports the funding realized from Sustainable Harvest to support communities like Latham. We strongly urge you, stay at the table. Make your case for the changes you'd like to see in meeting policy. Be involved and continue Lane County's membership in the AOCC. Thank you.
Thank you. Mickelson, I'm sorry I don't see your first name. Can't read it too well. Kay King.
Thank you.
Vaughn
I can help with that,
Kay
sir.
King, and Patty Hine. So welcome, Ms. Mickelson.
Thank you, Chair Sorensen. Vonnie Mickelson, for the record, Springfield resident and constituent directly of Commissioner Berney. I will say I'm a native-born Oregonian, grew up in Junction City, rural Lane County, was a benefit of the public schools that also received funding from many of our timber harvest forest lands, and I want to appreciate and recognize Mr. Atkinson and Mr. and Mrs. Culbertson for the work that they do on the behalf of our counties. I'm here today on behalf of the Springfield Area Chamber of Commerce, for which I'm president and CEO. We are 750 member employers across Lane County, including surrounding communities, many of which we see in front of us, which I see in front of me here: Cottage Grove, Coburg, Florence, Cresswell, Junction City. We are deliberate and we are conscientious in our study of issues, in understanding the diversity of views of our membership base, and also purposeful in our collective efforts to strengthen, represent, and promote our community and our businesses. We are not a lobby group. I'm here to express concern among the Springfield Chamber community regarding Lane County's consideration to withdraw its affiliation with the Association of Oregon and California Counties, AOCC. I would encourage a thorough and well-reasoned assessment of the complex implications and the message that is sent by any move away from AOCC affiliation and what it could pose, including unintended and adverse outcomes on our communities at large. The AOCC is viewed as one that ensures ONC lands are sustainably managed and that the county receives the revenues it deserves to sustain vital services without the need to raise taxes on our citizens. There is concern among our members and leadership that by not participating in AOCC, we risk losing a voice and a connection to critical conversations.
Thank you for your public.
That promote a healthy and sustainable economy alongside sound and sustainable forest management policy. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. I've submitted a testimony in writing, and I hope you'll have an opportunity to read that and consider that as you take a vote later this afternoon.
Thank you. We have Kay King, and then we have Patty Hine, and I'm moving then to our second sheet, Debbie McGee. So welcome, Kay King.
Thank you. I'm Kate King. I reside in Florence. We employ 100 employees, and we work hard every day to supply structural lumber and 5,000 other projects that people use in their daily lives. There are more trees growing today than when Columbus discovered America. 80 years ago, a plan was devised for use of the ONC forest lands. They were earmarked to ensure a guaranteed supply of revenue into perpetuity for schools and public services in the 18 ONC counties. The plan was a good one then, and it still is today. They were designated for timber harvest, while other lands are designated for multiple use or wilderness. Although every approach has been used to undermine the original designation of the ONC lands, the original purpose for those lands continues to be timber harvest for county coffers. I believe it is your duty as county commissioners to make sure that happens. It doesn't make sense business-wise at all for you to not consider the fact that those funds in the past supplied you with the revenue you needed for schools and other things. It's not a good idea to remove yourselves from the Association of Oregon Counties because they work to make sure that your counties are protected and that those revenues continue to come into the coffers. 2 minutes doesn't do it. The anti-logging community would like all forests to be locked up to harvest, and that's why they're pushing for the board to no longer participate. Lockup of the forest will increase fire danger. We urge you in Lane County to renew your membership in the Association of Oregon Counties. You need to stand up and fight for the sustainable supply of revenue for the long-term financial stability of Lane County. I believe that is your job, and I ask you to reconsider the vote you made and vote to continue to be part of this big voice for your county and for the people you represent.
Thank you for your public comment, Ms. King. So Patty Hine, followed by Debbie McGee, followed by Dave Piccioni.
Good morning, Commissioners. The name is Patty Hine. I've lived in the county for 25 years. Thank you for your service. I am also a third-generation wood products family, and a proud one as well. I've seen things change greatly over the last several decades, and I am here to say that the facts on the ground around the environment have changed as well, and I'm here to offer some scientific evidence from Roy Keene, who's a forest consultant and private timber appraiser and broker with 40 years of experience in Lane County, as well as Dominic LaSala, who is a scientist in Salem with the GEOS Institute. These are people who know forestry in today's terms, not in the past. We've heard a lot of testimony this morning about what's been done in the past, and those are good practices. We need different practices now, and that's what some of this information is about. We're learning new things. One of them is there is no more Columbus Day in the county of Lane. Columbus did not discover America. In its 1957 forest inventory, the United States Forest Service reported Lane County having a saw timber volume of 97 billion board feet. There's been a 37% decline up to 2014. I'm questioning this sustainability format that the forest industry claims that they follow. Sustainable forestry does not look like 37% decline. More roads, clear cuts, and plantations will not only increase erosion and flooding in the watershed, but also the chances of bigger, hotter, and smokier fires. As if to make the point, our first fire in Cottage Grove this year recently was on a clear cut right there. As my time is running out, I just want to suggest that there are scientists here who know forest ecology, there are firefighters here who know forest ecology in today's landscape of the climate disruption. Those are the facts. That's a public health hazard. That is what your job is to protect us about. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Debbie McGee, Dave Piccioni, Linda Perrine.
My name is Debbie McGee. I've lived in Lane County for 40 years. I came here to share what may build some hope. You put forward a new courthouse, but the people said nope. You see, what we got here is a failure of public trust. That's why we're here. You can feel this thrust. For so many years, you commissioners showed us your back. Our citizenship muscles hung flaccid and lax. It felt like this commission represented interests of developers, timber, rich folks with big money. And then thwarting the people's aerial spray ballot measure, that was not funny. To the ballot, you have a duty to refer, even if with the measure you personally don't concur. We gathered the signatures fair and square. Commissioners thwarted the ballot, showed you didn't care. So one day we woke up, together we talked, we organized, we showed up, and 3 positions we stalked. 2 of the seats we helped to replace. Now we can come here talking to you face to face. Now is the time to rebuild our trust. How do you do that? I think that you must. Listen without thinking what you want to say. In this democracy, you represent the people's way. So how will you decide? Don't let politics and campaign contributions be your guide. Ask yourselves, what are the people trying to say? Does it affect their health and safety day by day? Who benefits by what you decide? How does it affect the earth, the climate, and the poor? People of color, you know the score. And now the vote to pull out of the AOCC. Hear all these voices. We need you to see forest protection is climate protection. We need to leave more trees in the ground. Get out of the AOCC. Let's stop fooling around. We are the people. We gave you the power. You can make the right choice voting in the next hour. Our species is in a very dangerous place. Our future we must decide. You commissioners can help turn the tide. Tipping points are coming. Things are guaranteed to get worse. We can all bring solutions to this human-made climate curse. Work with us, please.
Thank you for your public comment. Dave Piccioni, Linda Perrine, Ernie Nemi.
Hi, Dave Piccioni. So I smoke cigarettes, and sometimes I wake up in the night and I have a cigarette while I'm awake at that time. And I've been feeling like my lungs are getting scarred from smoking. That's something that I do to myself. Nobody else has to suffer other than me. And I want to make a comparison between the situation in my lungs with the forests. So of the original forests that were in this country at the time of the time that this country was being formed, the United States of America, there was obviously a lot more trees. Now there's a lot less. It's going to feel the same to people who don't smoke when there's not enough pure air. Do you know what the number 350.org means? Are you all aware what that means? Okay, good. There's a lot of other things that you could learn, and I mean, I'm just giving you the benefit of the doubt this time. I'm assuming you're doing this because you believe that logging is a good thing. I'm not saying that you're taking money or anything. If that is the case, you're really wrong. I mean, everything is connected with everything else. Even if you don't want to study the environment, study anything else: healthcare, labor rights, animal rights, healthcare. All these things are connected. If you cut out if the forest gets cut. If the forests that we have in the world, in the whole world, get decimated, that's it for us. even before that, we're going to have problems. We're having problems. The tropical waters and the oceans are too warm to sustain certain kinds of life. Animals are dying. We're going to be there one time, pretty soon. I hope you guys can help. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Linda Perrine, Ernie Nemi, Pam Driscoll.
Good morning, I'm Linda Perrine. Tragically, a century of industrial logging practices has eliminated most of Oregon's original old-growth forests and disrupted its natural carbon cycle. Logging kills trees, stops them from growing, and accelerates the transfer of carbon from the forest to the atmosphere. Our carbon-intensive logging practices make the timber industry Oregon's largest source of global warming emissions. Researchers from OSU have estimated that between 2011 and 2015, forest fires only accounted for 4% of Oregon's total carbon emissions each year, whereas logging accounted for roughly 35%. To understand where all this carbon comes from, you need to look at the entire life cycle of wood products. When a forest is clear-cut, the branches, tree tops, and other logging residue left behind is usually burned or left to decompose. This process quickly releases large amounts of carbon that would otherwise remain stored in the forest for many years. There are also significant carbon emissions from the fossil fuels burned by logging equipment and trucks. Once logs reach a mill, even more carbon is lost as the wood is processed and cut into 2x4s and lumber. By the time the wood products reach their end destination, only a fraction of the original carbon from the forest remains. On top of all these emissions, logging destroys the tree's photosynthetic process that removes carbon from the atmosphere. We need to overhaul Oregon's outdated forest timber policies and practices immediately. The AOCC is not an organization supportive of changing policies in an era of climate change. Until they are, I do not want to see my tax dollars go to this organization. Finally, Commissioner Farr speaks fondly of his children and grandchildren at every board meeting. Mr. Farr, you cannot possibly want to pass on a legacy of supporting unsustainable forest practices which exacerbate climate change as your gift to your children and grandchildren. For their sake, please vote for change in forest practices by leaving the AOCC. Thank you.
Thank you. Ernie Nemi, followed by Pam Driscoll, followed by Betsy Hitz.
I'm Ernie Nemi. I'm president of Natural Resource Economics, a consulting firm here in Eugene. The reality is that the money that you send to the AOCC will be used by the other counties to promote logging. That logging on BLM lands will not just produce logs, it will produce carbon dioxide emissions. Research published by researchers at Oregon State University late last year shows that those emissions from the timber industry total 34 million tons. That's the largest source of carbon dioxide emissions in the state. Far exceeds the emissions from the burning of fossil fuels. On Sunday, I sent you email summarizing the literature to help you understand the economic significance of those carbon dioxide emissions. The research, including research from the BLM itself, shows that when logging occurs on BLM lands, the damage from the carbon dioxide emissions exceeds the value of the logs by 40 to 1, 40 to 1. The counties take half of that money. That means that when you receive $1 million in receipts from the BLM logging, the damage associated with that $1 million of your receipts is 80 to 1. So when you send money to the AOCC and receive $1 million, you are imposing $80 million, and let's be real, it's not just dollars, it's $80 million of people dying, people being sick, people being hungry, people living in abject poverty. Research 2 weeks ago gave us a scenario on what to expect over the next 30 years. With billions being forced to migrate because they no longer can feed their families, they no longer can find water, they no longer can survive. More than half of the people in the world will experience 20 days a year of lethally hot temperatures.
Thank you for
That's the reality that you will be pursuing if you commit money to the AOCC. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Pam Driscoll, followed by Betsy Hitz, followed by Susan Marcos.
Hi, my name is Pam Driscoll, and I live in Eastern Lane County. Heather Buck's my representative. I want to respond, first of all, to something Pat Farr said at the last meeting. He said we are a small repeat group, and I would like to let you all know that most people don't get to come to these meetings, and of all the people I've spoken with, everybody is in support of protecting our public forests, and I've said it before, but I'll have to say it again. Every independent poll of the last few years have shown the vast majority of Oregonians want us to protect our public forests. I am not against logging on private forests. They're already been turned into tree plantations. I went camping this weekend, 10 miles from my house in Dexter, and there was a clear cut on a steep slope. You looked down at the creek, and it was just flooded with slash and debris. There was no way any animals could get down there. That's our current forest practices. The AOCC, I've been trying to get information of the AOCC for 10 years. They aren't going to be transparent. They aren't going to work with us. They are a lobbying group for logging, and we have one of the weakest, worst logging practices in the Pacific Northwest, and that's what they want. They just want the money. We cannot clear-cut our way to a healthy future, and that's what they think we can do. It's not sustainable. Maybe it was when forest practices were different, when the human population was much less, but we have 10% or less of our original native forests left in Oregon. The last thing we need to do is clear-cut those forests, as they are much more resilient to climate change. Do the right thing.
Betsy Hitz, Susan, Michael Kerrigan.
Good morning. I'm Betsy Hitz from Eugene, speaking in favor of withdrawal from AOCC. I hope that all of you read or will read Ernie Neamey's email, which details fallout from continued support for the AOCC, which means continued clear-cutting on public lands in Western Oregon. Mr. Neamey is a highly credible source of information given his 40 years of experience in the field of natural resource economics. Carbon dioxide emissions from logging on ONC lands harms the health and virtual viability of all species and property and prosperity. Industrial logging in Western Oregon, whereby trees are logged at 35 to 45 years of age as opposed to 65 years and up, reduces late summer stream flow and raises water temperature. The results? Increased algae blooms, reduced numbers of salmon and steelhead, reduced income from recreation jobs. The quantifiable harms to our climate and water, thus all flora and fauna on the planet alone, would be enough for me, were I a Lane County Commissioner, to pull Lane County out of the AOCC. However, all dollars and cents must be taken into account, and in fact, may hold more sway in this decision. As Mr. Neamey shows, by facilitating logging on ONC lands, jobs and incomes in Western Oregon do not flourish, rather they wither. The number of timber jobs is falling by nearly 50% since 1996, and wages compared to other industries have decreased by about 25%. Thank you for voting in a budget amendment. I urge you to now make it a done deal and adopt the budget with the amendment. I do not want my tax dollars lining the pockets of the clear-cutting timber industry. These forests belong to all of us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Susan, Michael Kerrigan, Bernadette Barraza. Okay, after Bernadette will be Maura Dewey, Tom Peck, Phil Robinson. Are any of you here? Okay, Bernadette, you're here? Okay, so we'll have Bernadette first, and then why don't you two come up to the front and just sit down so we're ready. We'll call on you. So just to be clear, is Susan here? No? And Michael Kerrigan, not here. Bernadette, you're up, and welcome. You'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you. My name's Bernadette Barraza, Heather Bucks District. I resent having to try and change my thing from 3 minutes to 2, but stop poisoning us. I'm holding each of you personally responsible. Mr. Bozievich, especially you. any future aerial spraying in Lane County of any substance that is a known carcinogen, neurotoxin, or immune disruptor. Needs to be illegal, the spraying of such substances. Joe Berney, my grandson, has had type 1 diabetes since he was 3 years old. It's an autoimmune disease. An ounce of prevention might be worth a pound of cure. You guys are the gatekeepers of this horrible practice of spraying poison on people in Lane County. I'm letting my anger out today. Do the timber barons need your protection? Here's something a 70-year-old grandmother and lots of my 70-year-old grandmother friends have learned to say: fuck the timber barons. You guys can learn to say it too. It makes you feel good. Poisoning a clear-cut area, is that crucial to the financial well-being of our county? Should we sacrifice the health of the people who live here, the animals, the fish, the ground that grows our food, the water itself, groundwater, mountain streams, small rivers, bigger rivers? How many gallons of poison are sprayed every year? I didn't have time to find that information. I'd appreciate knowing. You know it doesn't stay on the clear-cut site. You know it ends up in our bodies. It ends up in our food, even organic farms. People have come here and told you about this. It ends up in the bodies of the chickens and pigs.
Thank you for your public comment.
You're kidding me. You don't have to say thank you. Just do your job.
Thank you. So we'll have Maura Dewey next. And Tom Peck. Are you, Mr. Peck? Welcome.
Thank you, Commissioners, for allowing me to speak. My name is Tom Peck. I live in Eugene. I'm a climate refugee from California. I saw many fires when I lived in the Bay Area, the Sonoma fire that wiped out a big part of the city of Napa. I moved to the Sierras and was very close to the Paradise fire that just totally wiped out that town due to climate change. California's been under a drought for 8 years. And that's moving north. It's moving this way. You can see the trees here are getting drier and dying. They're infested, and we need to change this. I'm sure you're all aware of what's happening with our climate. Before industrialization, for hundreds of thousands of years, the atmospheric CO2 level was around 300. It's now at 415 and climbing every month. There's a new report that it's climbing. And this is the cause of the fires and many other environmental problems. Staying with the AOCC is their intended mission is to support sustained logging in Lane County or in Oregon. And we need to leave the trees in the ground. The trees are the best way to prevent the increase in CO2. They are the main absorbers of CO2. We need to leave the trees standing. I know that the logging industry, some of you perhaps take money from the logging industry, and perhaps they have been lobbying you to reverse your decision. But you need to think about your children and your grandchildren, because these are the ones that are going to be suffering from climate change in the next 20, 30, 40 years. Your decision today will, as you said...
Thank you for your public comment. Phil Robbins, followed by Melanie Sevenrue, followed by Al LePage. Welcome, Mr. Robbins.
Hello, my name is Philip Robbins. I'm from Dexter. And I would like to speak on 3 issues, if I can, quickly. The first one is that these meetings are not really accessible to me as a person with severe hearing impairment. And I would like to say that the county has expressed interest in greater accessibility, and this was part of the reason for building the new courthouse. You can have greater accessibility for the hearing impaired without spending millions of dollars, and the answer is real-time closed captioning. It works, so please consider it. I would like to say that I am a third-generation logger in Oregon, a third generation of my family to work as a logger. My grandfather logged timber off his own land and built a sawmill near Lebanon, Oregon. My father worked for Justina Brothers out of Springfield before he went into the ministry full-time. I worked for Crown Zellerback, logging old-growth clear cuts in Portland's Bowen watershed, and also for some companies out of Portland and on Mount Hood and in Douglas County. And I grew up in the heart of, or I went to high school in Glide in the heart of timber country. And I would like to say I do not wish my money to be given to the AOCC. I consider them to be an extremist right-wing political organization which continually stifles creative thinking and seeking positive forestry solutions. There's a lot more I can say about that. They are undermining the future of forestry and misrepresenting a lot of people. The third thing I would like to say is that I live next to Parvin Butte, and it is not pleasant.
Thank you for your public comment.
Commissioners, I would say thanks for nothing, really, and I want to ask, what are you doing about the situation at TV Butte in Oak Ridge?
Thanks so much for your public comment, sir. Melanie Severnro, thank you. And then followed by Al LePage, and then we're going to page 3. Okay, thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity. I am an Oregon native who was born in Eugene and raised in the Willamette Valley. I have settled in Springfield with my family, and I live in a very interesting part of Springfield where most of it is actually county property, and a small part of it is actually Springfield property. Now, the main road accessing that is called Aspen Street. And you're meeting on that during item 15 this afternoon at your 2:30 meeting. That road is listed, it's a 5th road on the 2nd sheet of a very long list of local access roads that you're discussing. And it's in complete disrepair. And it says the images that I sent you, provided to you, those are actually 8 years old at this point. It says Google Maps 2011. I haven't taken recent images, but it is continually getting worse. There's been Band-Aids put on it, but nobody actually knows who's doing those Band-Aids because nobody's allowed to. It's also directly in front of Centennial Elementary School, a school that my son will go to this fall, and that serves 400 students in the community. There's also fields that is frequented by baseball and soccer throughout the spring, summer, and fall months. So this is a very popular road. In addition, I've had multiple conversations with Dan Hurley at the county and with the city of Springfield on what do we do? Everybody tells me we can't do anything. The board has to make a decision. And I'm glad that you're discussing it this afternoon, and I hope you do something about this particular road. On the agenda, it says that there's 16 parcels that access this road. As you can see from the tax lot map, it is many, many more tax lots than that. And there's 138 that I counted just with the green dots, 111 of them which are Lane County only taxpayers, and 26, including me, are City of Springfield taxpayers who voted to help pay for the roads in the City of Springfield. So what I'm asking for you to do is either bring it into Lane County, put it in the city of Springfield, do something so something can be done and fixed on this road, because it's not safe to bike or ride or walk.
Thank you so much for your public
Thank you
comment.
for your opportunity. Have a good day.
Okay, Al LePage, and then we'll go to the next sheet, Anna Yarbrough. Welcome.
Thank you. Shakespeare, Davy Crockett, and Socrates. What would Shakespeare say? Much ado about something. What would Davy Crockett say? A lot of politicking been going on since last week. We heard everything from inaccurate information go to misinformation and then to allegations. But this week, it's deliberative process. What would Socrates say? I think Socrates would say that this process has been deliberative, that the substantive number of public comments is part of what democracy is about. I also listened very carefully to Commissioner Berney and Commissioner Buck last week, and they came to this saying that their process, they implied it was very deliberative for them. And I know Mr. Sorensen also noted that he's been deliberating on this for years. So that's what I would say in that realm. Now, this is what I was really going to talk about today. As the executive director of a nonprofit organization that's federally recognized, I thought I'd check out the financial transparency of AOCC, because I know I have to work my tail off to account for every darn penny that's raised and spent by our nonprofit. Well, you know what? To my great surprise, I found out that AOCC is an unincorporated association, and it hasn't been around for a few years, it's been around for decades. So you know what? Even if they opened up all their meetings, which I agree with, I could see maybe executive sessions in terms of policy transparency, in terms of financial transparency, for any organization that's an unincorporated association that doesn't seem to have to report those numbers and make them public. Just for that in itself, I would withdraw from AOCC or any other organization with publicly funded money. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Anna Yarbrough, welcome, followed by Isabel Knight, followed by Olive, Olive's last name I can't read. So, welcome, Anna.
Thank you. I'll try to make this quick. As you can see, I have my hands full. I'm a fifth-generation Oregonian, small business owner, true environmentalist, mother, and professional forester living in Fall Creek. I've been working in the forest industry since 2013 and can honestly say it's the most rewarding experience, other than raising this kid, that I've ever had. We have the daily opportunity to increase forest health, protect and produce valuable wildlife habitat, clean air and clean water, support struggling rural communities through job creation, and produce sustainable and renewable wood materials. Like so many of my colleagues, forestry is more than just a profession for me. It's a way of life. Those of us whose livelihoods and families depend on our forests are in this for the long haul, for this generation and our kids and grandkids. This is our future forester right here. It's a way of life that so many of us cannot fathom living without. These forests are our home, and that's why I'm here today. Forestry and the work that AOCC promotes is sustainable and good for Lane County. It seems far too often that our way of life is under fire, whether it be from constant litigation by so-called environmentalists, pressure for more laws and regulations from people who, quite frankly, don't have any understanding of what is already in place, or decreased support for sustainable forestry practices from people in positions who really can make a difference, such as yourselves. How long does rural Oregon have to suffer before we start taking action? Look at Oak Ridge, Sweet Home, and Lowell, just to name a few examples. How many small towns do we have to see suffer before we make a change? By removing the AOCC funding, you are directly responsible for taking away our seat at the table from discussions about ONC land management. How much longer will you let rural Oregon suffer? How much longer will you ignore the fact that forests are the answer? How much longer can you ignore your constituents in rural Lane County?
Thank you so much for your public comment. Under challenging circumstances. Isabel Knight, Olive Passaro, Gabriela Hernandez, Laura Bradshaw.
Hi, I'm Isabel Knight, and I've never lived in a world without environmental struggles. Environmental struggles that I believe are caused mainly by organizations and people who claim that I can give them my trust. But they're doing things that aren't trustworthy. They're taking the trust I gave them and that my parents gave them and abusing it. And I don't really understand why. Well, I'm not giving them my money, obviously, because I don't pay taxes, but why my parents and my grandparents are paying taxes that go to, that money goes to organizations such as AOCC. Because, well, to quote Greta Thunberg, you claim you love your children, yet you're stealing their future in front of their very eyes. And I wish I could say that my life doesn't, and my well-being doesn't lay in your hands, but it does. So I'm asking you to please take into consideration, well, what a lot of people have said here today. And thank you for listening.
Thank you for your public comment.
You don't have to run away.
Yeah. Olive and Gabriella, Laurel, Tish Hathaway, Sam Kropp. Any of you, could you raise your hands if I've called your name? Olive, Gabriella, Laurel, Tish, Sam, and Bob. Okay, come on up to the front if I've called your name. And, okay. So we have, okay, and could one of you come up?
We'd like to go together.
Okay, you'll have 3 minutes, and please come up to the microphone and take 3 minutes.
Okay.
2 minutes, excuse me.
Sorry. Hang on, can you, okay. Hi, my name's Gabriela Hernandez, and the app I was just using closed. So, yeah, okay. Where is it? Sorry. Hi, I'm Gabriela Hernandez, and I'm a 6th grader at the Village School. When people think of Oregon, they think of hiking and biking on trails, wine and beer tasting, and exploring forests. We're known for our beautiful wilderness, but how can we when that wilderness is slipping through our fingers all the time? We marvel in the lusciousness of our forests, and yet we have let logging companies log acre after acre. We consider ourselves lovers of nature, and yet a portion of your tax dollars have been given to a company that encourages the extreme clear-cutting of forests. As Terry Swearingen quotes, "We have been living on this planet as if we have another one to go to. Luckily, this will not be happening quite as excessively, or, wait, this was written when we... any longer. Thank you." Oh, this was no. I don't. It's fine. Just keep going. No, because this was like really. Okay. Sorry. Just. I don't know. Can you? Thank you for your consideration of withdrawing from the AOCC.
Thank you so much for your public comment.
Thank you.
Okay, and then who are the folks in the front there? Sir? Yeah. Okay, we'll take you first, and then Ms. Kropp, and then Mr. Mays.
Hello, my name is Laurel Bradshaw. I am a 6th grader at the Village School. I live in Eugene. For years, the AOCC has been using taxpayers' money to support logging and increase clear cutting. People say that forest defense is climate defense, but the AOCC is not defending our forests. It's not defending our climate, and it's not defending our future. We cannot support that. It is not sustainable. The levels of carbon in our atmosphere are at the highest that humanity has ever seen, and we can't afford to be chopping down one of our best sources of oxygen in mass amounts.
Thank you for your public comment. Okay, Sam Kropp, followed by Bob Mays.
Hi, Commissioners. Thank you for having this public comment. I'm a resident of Eugene. I was a high school teacher for 5 years in Springfield, and now I'm a community educator and work with people around the county. I work with rural folks, I work with students, I work with recreationists, educators, families, and people who've been watching this AOCC issue for a very, very long time. And because of my work and the stories that I've encountered through my work, I am vehemently against this county's membership in the AOCC. So I think that the assertion that there's not been a deliberative process is erroneous and perhaps intentionally obstructive. There has indeed been a deliberative process, and it has taken place through years of AOCC membership, through community participation, through science-backed studies that show clearly the impacts of AOCC-backed forest management are problematic, and through economic analyses that illustrate just how fiscally irresponsible this relationship really is. The science and the research is out there, and they have been thorough, and they have been deliberative. Today, in my count, 21 voices spoke against AOCC and 5 for, several of which have ongoing vested interests and backing from the timber industry. Contrary to some assertions, the people advocating against AOCC are not well-funded. We are mostly volunteers, retirees, and people who are driven here because we care about our future. We are not mindless tree huggers. We are not anti-logging. We are youth. We are elders. We are timber. We come from timber families. We are landowners. We are teachers. We are outdoor enthusiasts, and we are your constituents. About 10 years ago, Lane County considered leaving AOCC for many of the same reasons you're hearing today. Lane County residents requested that AOCC be more transparent, more publicly accountable, and that they consider carbon sequestration in their forest plans. And since that time, they have not done any of those things. The AOCC is an issue of democracy, and this is becoming clear to all those who are watching. We are asking for a county commission that has the vision, drive, and strength to be effective, to not wrap us up in tangles of bureaucracy, and to not alienate us with endless processes that drag decisions along.
Thank you for your public comment.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Mays, come forward. You'll be given 2 minutes. Welcome.
I live on Collard Lake Road in Florence, and we're not, we were talking about maintenance for the future on this road, but the problem is it's an emergency now. A couple of weeks ago, we had a fire on Collard Way, which is off of Collard Lake Road. Fortunately, the fire trucks were able to get there. I talked to the drivers of the truck the next morning, and they said when they went around the curve, they had to put the driver's side wheels 3 feet over into a ditch to get by the part of the road that has already caved in. This ditch is right beside a hill. They can't go over any further. Well, since then, the road has actually deteriorated a little bit more. I talked to the water district. The only access to the water tower that feeds all the houses on Collard Loop, Collard Way, Collard Lake Road, and some other areas below that area, the only access for that tower to maintain it is on Collard Lake Road. So a few years ago, we had a meeting down on Mercer Lake Road at the Elks Meeting Lodge. There was one of the counselors were there. The maintenance for the highway department, or the road maintenance department, was there, and we chit-chatted. And we were complaining at that time about weeds and brush. You couldn't see around the corners very good. Well, anyhow, the end of the meeting, somebody asked the question, the county may not be responsible for cutting the weeds, even though they're ugly, but what if we can't get through because of an emergency? They said, well, if you can't get through with an ambulance or a fire truck or fix the water tower, then the county, of course, would have to do that if it ever got to that. Ladies and gentlemen, it has gotten to that point. We're not exaggerating. The majority of the people that live up on this whole area that I just described are retired.
And thank you.
One way
for your
in.
Public comment.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Okay, is there anyone that has not signed up for public comment? I see everyone that signed up or called on has been heard. We will, we have 10 minutes before our 11 a.m. time certain. So does the board want to move on to remonstrances or move on to the budget, or what do you want to do? Okay, well, let's move on to the remonstrance then, and we'll ask if there are any commissioners that have any remonstrances they wish to give at this time. Commissioner Buck.
I just wanted to acknowledge all the little ones and the kids that were here today. We rarely get to see anybody under the age of 18 in this room. And I love to see more youth participate in what we're doing, because one day they will either be sitting here at this board or participating at the podium or be in our audience. I would love to see the county engage with our youth more. In Cottage Grove, they have a youth advisory council, which would be lovely to emulate here at the county level, but somehow get youth engaged more. Their thoughts, their input is extremely valuable as we make decisions on behalf of their futures. I just want to acknowledge them and thank them for coming.
Any other remonstrances? Seeing none, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I would just like to say that I think the diversity of opinion we just had, in a sense, is symptomatic of the opportunity to really start democratizing and celebrating democracy and decisions we make. I believe that I will have some comments when we revisit this, but right now I depending upon how some citizens feel. I think some commissioners may be praised and others vilified on any particular vote. I think that's unfortunate, and I think that's a sign of the times. I want to remind everyone on either side of any issue that each member here was elected by majorities and represent values of everyone's neighbors, our friends, our colleagues, our co-workers, our customers, our clients, and I really hope we can all consider this. And I would like to make one other point before I weigh in when we get to this item, which is next on the agenda. I'd like to just point out that not once during my campaign for county commissioner, not at any of the debates, any of the discussions, any of the tours, any of the meetings with different forestry and environmental groups, not one time, and only one time in the 8 months before I won my election and became a county commissioner, did anyone ever attempt to let me know the significance or lack thereof of Lane County's membership in the Association of Oregon and California Counties. So in a sense, last minute making a lot of noise on an issue, and I'm not suggesting people haven't been concerned with this for years, but it kind of caught me by surprise. And I, for one, am so sad that each side of this one is full of emotion, accusation, doom and gloom, hyperbole, not that it's, and believes fervently. So all I want to end this comment with is to remind everyone during times that were even more brutal and decisions more oppressive, when the Nazis were bombing England and the future of democracy really was at stake, that there was a motto by Churchill, and it was plastered all over England, and that motto was, "Stay calm and carry on." And by the way, decades ago, when Commissioner Farr hired my now wife to work at Gray's Garden Center, there are T-shirts there that say, "Stay calm and garden on." I'm going to ask we stay calm as we get into this, because we will get into this next on the agenda. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I know there's a lot of staff waiting on our consent calendar, so with the board's, with the board's indulgence, we'll move on to item 8. Now, I'm looking over at Ms. Moody on the budget. If we take this item right now, and it takes us 5 or 10 minutes, which it probably will, we will have a time certain at 11 a.m. So are you okay for the afternoon or late morning if we get, that's scheduled for 45 minutes, so we could start, okay? All right, so I'll ask you to keep watching, and we'll take our consent calendar, and then we'll take our 11 o'clock time certain, and then we'll come back to the budget. So at this time, taking up the consent calendar, and you will recall we're going to pull items 8, B2, 8C3, 8C4, and 8D1. And other than that, we can approve, I believe we can approve the consent calendar as presented, and then we can move on to each of these as a separate vote. Commissioner Buck.
I'll move to approve the consent calendar with those 4 items excluded.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Buck to approve the consent calendar as presented, leaving out items 8B2, 8C3, 8C4, and 8D1. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. And the consent calendar as modified is approved, and all those board orders are approved by a vote of 5-0. We'll then move to each one of these separately in sequence as they appear. So the first item is 8B2, Order 19-06-18-11, in the matter of approving certain contracts and amendments and delegating authority to the county administrator to sign the approved contracts and amendments. And before I call on anyone for a motion, I'd like to recognize Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. I have a conflict of interest on item B2, C3, and C4 of Section 8 of our agenda. I am related to the Executive Director of St. Vincent de Paul, so I will recuse myself from this particular vote.
Okay, is there a motion to approve item B2?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, moved by Commissioner Berney, seconded by Commissioner Bozievich to approve Order 19-06-18-11. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 4-0. Commissioner Buck excused. Next, take up item 8C3, which is Order 19-06-18-06, in the matter of approving certain contracts and amendments and delegating authority to the county administrator to sign the approved contracts and amendments. And Commissioner Buck has stated she has a conflict of interest on this matter, won't be voting. I'll now entertain a motion to approve the order as presented.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Berney, seconded by Commissioner Bozievich to approve the order as presented. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries. Opposed, say no. That motion carries 4-0. This is reminding me we have a time certain, which I'm now aware of. So are we on 3? We're on 3, right? So all those in favor, we voted. So the vote is 4-0. Commissioner Buck excused and not voting. Motion and order are adopted. Item 8. C4, Order 19-06-18-07, in the matter of making sole source determination for selection of St. Vincent de Paul of Lane County to provide year-round dusk to dawn safe sleeping and emergency winter warming services, and delegating authority to the county administrator to execute the determinations and contracts with the sole source provider. Commissioner Buck is excused and has stated she has a conflict of interest and is not participating. I'll now entertain a motion to approve the order as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Berney, seconded by Commissioner Bozievich to approve the order as presented. Any further discussion? Seeing none, go to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed, play no. The motion carries 4-0. All commissioners voting in the affirmative. Commissioner Buck excused. We'll now call up item 8D1. That's Order 19-06-18-08 in the matter of approving compensation changes for Lane County American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, AFSCME Local 2831 General Unit. And Commissioner Farr is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a conflict of interest. My son is a member of AFSCME Local 2831 General Unit. I will recuse for this vote.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the order as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Commissioner Buck, seconded by Commissioner Berney to approve Order 19-06-18-08. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. And the vote is 4-0. Commissioners, 4 commissioners voting in the affirmative. Commissioner Farr excused. I think we've now dispensed with the consent calendar, and it's 11 o'clock, so I'll call up our Health and Human Services crew on item 9, which is Health and Human Services presentation of community health centers of potential expansion into Cottage Grove. With us to discuss this is Karen Gaffney and other folks from Health and Human Services. We set this up for a 45-minute period, and of which approximately 15 minutes will be the presentation. So Ms. Gaffney, if you could introduce your colleagues at the table, and please take 15 minutes for your presentation.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Sorensen and Commissioners. Today, we have Dr. Rick Kincaid, the Medical Director of our Community Health Centers, and Ron Jelm, who manages the Community Health Centers of Lane County, here to walk through a particular opportunity that we have in the CHCs, which is very exciting, and I will tell you has actually been a long time in the making as it made its way to this particular work session. I'm going to start, and then Ron will walk through some background materials that we have for you, and then really the bulk of the time is reserved for questions and conversations with the board. This is an important strategic decision for the county in terms of moving forward or not, and so we want to give you the information you need to understand the situation we have with our partners in Cottage Grove, offer you any information, and then really hear your thoughts. We don't have an order in front of you today, so we aren't looking for official action, but I very much want to hear your thoughts, perspective, and any direction that you would give us as staff for moving forward. By way of introduction, I would also say this item is a clear line of sight with the county's strategic plan. I don't have to remind you that we have a goal around a healthy and safe county, and one of the key items in that first strategic area is to expand access to primary care and behavioral health in all areas of the county, and with an emphasis on rural communities. And this particular opportunity that we have today squarely fits within that key area of expanding access to primary care and behavioral health in the rural community of Cottage Grove. So we'll go to that next slide. As I mentioned, we've been having this conversation with our partners in Cottage Grove for a long time. I think last time we met there, and we have a few of our partners here in the audience today as well. It's been about 10 years, frankly, that we've been having this conversation in different ways with Cottage Grove as they've looked towards an opportunity to have a federally qualified health center on site in their community. We've talked about it in the context of school-based health centers that evolved to a freestanding clinic, and we were poised to move forward right before the last election, where there was a lot of concern about the future of the Affordable Care Act. And at that point, those of you who were on the board remember we had a work session with the board and agreed that really we needed to put expansion on hold for the federally qualified health centers until we had a more clear sense of what the environment looked like in terms of risks and opportunities. So that conversation, we pushed pause on that conversation with Cottage Grove. I did want to remind you, and on the slide, the dates are here, the expansion that we have done in the last several years in the community health centers. The focus when the Affordable Care Act went into effect in 2014, a lot more people had access to insurance, but they didn't have access to a doctor. And really to address that situation, we worked with community partners to open 2 new clinics and do a significant remodel of the Charnelton Clinic in order to address that. I would say that we targeted the work in the Eugene Springfield core because the sheer number of people in this community, it meant that if we opened a new clinic in Eugene Springfield, we were able to bring in more people. Quite frankly, in our community health centers right now, and Ron can give you these numbers later too, many of the people we serve in the CHC live in Cottage Grove and make that commute up to the community. So there is significant need in that community. And then this slide is to give you a sense of some of the key partners we're working with on this project in the community. And I know the packet included a written attachment of some FAQs that have been developed alongside this project. But I have to appreciate deeply the work of South Lane Mental Health, which has been there for years, working with us to find a way to better meet the needs of people in that community. Peace Health, Cottage Grove Hospital, and South Lane School District have been there alongside us from the beginning as well. And we've added new partners along the way, including Lane Community College and the Be Your Best community group that has developed since then. I will tell you this is absolutely a grassroots effort in that community, and they have approached us with significant need and asked for our help. So on that, I'm going to kick it over to Ron and Rick to talk about the project.
Thank you, Karen. Let this give you a summary of where we are in our current state of the project development. As Karen indicated, been multiple iterations of different options that we have looked at over the years at Cottage Grove to serve that community need. Currently, what we are looking at would be to develop a community health center site in the building next to the Cottage Grove High School. It is, some of you may have known as the Lane Community College building. It was originally renovated for services at that site, underused facility, and that is where the community is looking to develop a community health center site, which would not only serve the community, but because of the proximity to the high school and school services, it would also be a resource to serve students throughout the district. We would provide primary care access not only to the Cottage Grove community, but into southern Lane County as well, with quite a draw, obviously, right on the I-5 corridor would be easy access. A part of the current state would also look for exploring partnerships with LCC and with the South Lane School District. Both have an interest in looking at how we might develop joint partnerships with those organizations for teaching, for health careers. In dental services, the high school has a number of programs for different types of health careers for high school students, and so we would look, and they're looking to perhaps have partnerships that would explore those types of options. As Karen indicated, South Lane Mental Health has had a long-standing interest in how they might develop a relationship with a federally qualified health center to serve that community, and they have been front and center in looking to see how we could partner with them in this type of arrangement for integrated behavioral health and specialty services to serve the behavioral health needs in that community. And then they have a dental program that historically has been staffed by volunteers in the community, and they're looking to see how we might develop that. Dental services has been, full-service dental have been an area of interest that the community health center has an interest in exploring, so there may be some good partnerships in that respect as well. The probable timeline is 2019 would be a time for the community. This really is very much community-led. This is not being led by the Community Health Center, very much community-led for the community partners to further explore community needs and to identify and hopefully secure funding opportunities during this calendar year. 2020 would go into much more active development. The first part of the year would be facility design and construction of building. We've not yet done that piece. And the full fleshing out of collaborative models with all of those different partners that I identified. We would look to start renovation the latter half of 2020. We would start provider recruitment. Arguably, we would start provider recruitment maybe a little earlier than that, but the lead time on provider recruitment sometimes is as much as a year. So we would look to identify providers to go into that community in 2020 and have a clinic opening, which would be in the second quarter probably of 2021. Finish the renovation in the first quarter and sometime in the second quarter complete the renovation, have the initial staffing in place, and the services would begin in the latter half of 2021. Clinic design, I put the asterisk up, operational and financial projections. Just like on the TV ads for your favorite broker, past performance is no indicator of future performance. I do want to say these are very preliminary. We've not had the opportunity to have architects and engineers go through the LCC South Lane facility to really flush out what might be needed to renovate to have a full-service primary care clinic. And so there are lots of unknowns, but this is based on our previous experience, which is not insubstantial, of opening the Brookside and the Delta Oaks Clinic and having a pretty good idea of what costs are. Have a 5,200 square foot primary care clinic. This would not include the existing dental space, which we understand is pretty well set. It would have space for 2 primary care teams, a total of 6 providers. That would provide the opportunity for long-term growth. We probably wouldn't have 6 providers for quite some time. You know, well into the 3rd year, perhaps 4th year of operation, we'd start to flesh out that second primary care team. Really, the first couple of years of operation would be 3 providers, we think, would be certainly sufficient. Would definitely have integrated behavioral health and alternative care, which is so integral to the services that we provide. And we're still fleshing out what dental services would look like in that community. Our best estimate of the county's financial commitment, we believe it'd be somewhere in the ballpark of $1.8 million to renovate the space and actually open the doors. And all of that $1.8 million would be on the community and fundraisers and other partners to provide the funding for that startup and renovation. The county's responsibility would be, once we open the doors, they cover the operating losses to operational break even, and then until we recover our costs. Time to operational break even would probably be somewhere toward the end of the 2nd year of operation or the beginning of the 3rd year of operation. And the cost to operational break even, we would estimate would be in the ballpark of $700,000. And then we would start to recover our costs probably end of year 4, early part of year 5, we would have recovered all of our startup investment. Factors for your consideration as to moving forward. Lots of opportunities. As Karen indicated, it supports the Lane County strategic priority for improving access of behavioral health and primary care services into the rural communities. There is definitely sufficient market size. Roughly 4,100 of our current patients reside in Cottage Grove and the surrounding zip codes. Trillium has roughly 9,000 Medicaid members in those zip codes, so it's a substantial population who could be served in that community. There's extremely high community engagement. This is not a community where we are looking at putting a pin in the map and trying to make relationships in the community and wondering if we would be supported or not. A tremendous amount of community engagement, which has been in place for many years. Multiple players, which is the opportunity to explore new options and opportunities. I mentioned LCC and South Lane Mental Health and South Lane School District, opportunities for us to explore things that we then could transport and use in our, throughout probably our system. And opportunities for potential funding. Oregon Community Foundation and others have expressed an interest in funding this opportunity. There are challenges. Funding for a startup is not yet complete, and that is obviously a $1.8 million nut is not insubstantial, and so that is a hurdle that needs to be crossed. There's uncertainty in the CCO landscape. Karen had indicated that we had substantial funding in 2 recent expansions at Delta Oak and Brookside from Trillium, which had a clearly identified need to help create access for its membership. As we have talked with the board previously, the CCO landscape is probably changing. There may be 2, perhaps 3 coordinated care organizations come January 1st. Their ability to fund a startup is uncertain, as is our payment methodology from new CCOs. So that's an uncertainty for us. There is stretched bandwidth in the community health center as well as the community. We are still absorbing the tremendous growth from our new clinics and the Charnelton expansion. And so the community health center's leadership team, starting a new center is a big lift, and this would not, I can't underestimate the amount of activity that this takes from staff. Recruiting into a rural community is a challenge, and that is something that we need to be cognizant of, is the ability to, particularly providers. I'm very confident we would have support staff, but you're very dependent upon providers who want to be in a rural community. It will absolutely require close oversight to assure operational sustainability. The reality of a smaller sized clinic is you're much more vulnerable to uncertainties. There's a good amount of fixed cost, and a change in something in the dynamics of a smaller clinic, you're less able to absorb changes, so you lose a key provider. That would be something that would be of concern. We lose a provider in one of our larger clinics. It's a little easier to cover that fixed cost and to sustain potential losses or changes over a shorter period of time. And then finally, in making a decision to move forward, there are always opportunity costs. So a little bit is what would we be putting aside? We never lack for opportunities, good news, in the service to our patients and to the service to the community. So there's just a panoply of potential opportunities that we need to weigh this against, which are expansion in other supportive services. We've talked certainly about how we do a better job of integrating primary care into supported housing or into homeless situations. We're doing work in expanding our care into assisted living. We're looking at expanding case management services and other services to social determinants, pharmacy, a whole, I could go on and on. If we continue to look at this, we'd have to put some of those other opportunities on hold. So that was a relatively quick overview to give you the opportunity to really ask questions of us. Have Dr. Kincaid weigh in. He knows the market very well, and we've been integrally involved in those conversations. So open this up for questions. Really, the decision points are from you as do we proceed as we previously discussed, and what type of commitments are you comfortable having us make to potential outside funders?
Okay, Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of things. I do have a couple of comments regarding my support try to have support for moving forward with this. First, I'd like to mention, acknowledge Bobby Green in the audience. Bobby is here with Oregon Health Authority. Bobby's the local government affairs manager. Thank you for being with us today, Bobby. Bobby's my neighbor. Our kids grew up together, and we spend a lot of time talking back and forth. I'm glad you're here, Bobby. Commissioner. The second thing I will mention is that we have 3 retirees from our Community Health Council today. Tonight, our Community Health Council meets, and that's the council that gives citizen and user advice on the FQHCs. Tonight, Carol Dennis, Diane Robertson, and Lynn Schwartz are going to be attending the last meeting. And I, alas, will not be at that last meeting due to a board conflict. But the 3 of them have been just integral in helping you, Dr. Kincaid and Ron, and everyone, making certain that the consumer input into operating our health centers is heard and listened to. And the meetings, the CHC meetings that I attend are fun. They're enjoyable, especially when we finish the agenda early, because then we get to play bingo. And that's one of the cool things about the CHC.
CHC bingo.
CHC bingo, yeah. My name was one of the answers one time. I thought that was pretty cool.
What was the question?
It was it was easy. It was the Lane County representative to the CHC. A Board of Commissioners rep. I was wondering who it was. So, but just to back up, there are a couple of. This is daunting, stepping into a rural community for some of the reasons that you suggested. And one of the main ones is something that we talked about a little bit yesterday: recruiting somebody who wishes to serve in a rural community. It's difficult enough when you don't have a residential program in Lane County. It's difficult enough to get them into the larger metropolitan areas where housing services are more available. So I don't ask for comments on that at this point in time. However, possibly our new position that's going to be filled, the talent manager, will help with the acquisitions that you're going to be looking at to fill this job. Adding 1 team of 3 immediately, that's exciting. Adding the second team is going to be doubly exciting because it's not just going to serve Cottage Grove. As you mentioned, it's going to reach from the entire rural southern Lane County community. The second thing that's daunting is that I was at the opening of the last 2 FQHCs at Delta Oaks and at Brookside, both of which received, I believe it was $1 million from our CCO. And before I say any more about that, I will state a potential conflict of interest because my wife, Debbie Farr, does work for Trillium, which is our current CCO. But they provided substantial funding for the development of those 2 FQHCs. You're not going to get it for this at this FQHC, or you potentially, there's a question mark as to whether or not you will. So you can comment briefly on that, but once again, that is a daunting part of funding the development, not the operational, but the capital costs of establishing the health center. That is the only questions I have. If you want to respond to that, that's great. I don't know that you have answers, but Karen's faunching, so.
Chair Sorensen, Commissioner Farr, I appreciate the opportunity to underscore a little bit about that upfront cost for the renovation and the startup. And as we've said, this is a clear partnership with the community of Cottage Grove, and our partners down there are very clear that that $1.8 million is their project to raise. And I think Trillium certainly has contributed in the past, and there's some significant work happening with the Oregon Community Foundation. And part of why it's important for us to get your guidance today is I believe if we're to move forward with this project, then the community would ask us to be that fiscal agent and work with them on that fundraising effort. So the Oregon Community Foundation is very interested in this project and the collaboration that comes from it. And I know that the community is working with other funders as well. So that piece is a community project.
And I served in the legislature with Max Williams, who's the head of the Oregon Community Foundation. I don't think that link is going to do us any good, however. So, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Buck.
Well, most people can imagine, I'm extremely excited about this project and, of course, very supportive. It is prudent to go through the right steps to make sure it's successful at the end. And I appreciate going through all that you've gone through so far. As many people in the community and you yourselves have noted that it's been nearly 10 years of discussions and talks in order just to reach this point. And it seems like now the stars are really starting to align for this particular project, especially given interest with community funding partners. Before I sat in this seat, second to housing issues, this was one of their deepest concerns in South Lane County, because the transportation options to come to the center of Eugene are very challenging. Most people simply just didn't go and went without care. And the numbers you noted of 4,100 people that you're trying to serve here, most likely in the downtown core, maybe a variety of the other clinics, is really significant. And being able to move that into their own community, there'll probably be a bump up of people that normally wouldn't get care being willing to attend locally. In addition to that, we open up a lot of space for care for patients here in the core that may have long waiting lists or may not come as regularly because it's harder to schedule those appointments. I think that's a real opportunity as well when we're weighing other opportunity costs at the same time. So, of course, as I stated, I'm hugely supportive of this and do understand the diligence that you're trying to go through to ensure that it is a success, because once we move forward with this kind of big project and all the effort and time that you put into it so far and the continued effort and time it will take to see it to fruition, I want to make sure that it doesn't fall through the cracks along the way.
Commissioner Berney?
I'm going to ask several questions, but before I do, I want you to know I'm very supportive of this. But before I even go further, I'm sorry, I have to do this. Commissioner Green, among other notable achievements, starter for the Oregon Ducks football team, chair of this Lane, oh, I'm doing it, past chair of this Lane County Board of Commissioners, past chair of the Association of Oregon Counties. I want you to know that only yesterday, I was sharing with our CAO, Mr. Mokraheisky, a booklet called Summit for America's Youth. And Mr. Green, Steve, Commissioner Green, was one of the 10 people that went to Philadelphia, that was at the President's Summit for America's Youth, that developed that booklet I showed you. And it was all about discussing how to convene and catalyze various community segments that aren't working together around an issue. I'm sorry, I had to do that. I apologize, sir. My questions. One, you mentioned funding. My understanding is that Lane Community College is preparing for a bond election. Is part of this a part of that bond election?
We do not believe so.
I would encourage discussions about that. It might solve a problem. I don't know. It might be that I don't have enough background information. Two, will LCC have a traditional landlord-tenant relationship with Lane County in this situation?
You know, we're really not sure. That is one of those components. I mentioned the good news, the challenges and the opportunities of multiple partners. One of the challenges is there's multiple partners, and I can't speak to what that relationship might be. I do understand that there are some covenants in the use of that building related to education, and we would have to, really our partners would have to figure that out as to how that building could be purposed for primary care services.
Well, I think the opportunities, obviously, as you've mentioned, for partnerships are huge. But I also ask, how can you predict when we will break even if one significant factor of cost has not even been discussed, which might be the rental of the facility?
That's that asterisk that I put there, Commissioner Berney, which is, well, past practices are no indication of future performance. We assumed that what we would pay in that space would be market rate based upon our historical and current rates.
Okay, no, thank you.
And if it's better,
You can
we're
see
using the
why I
best
said-
information we have.
I apologize.
No, using the best information we have to date.
You can see why I started my questions with I support this completely. I have two more, if I may, Mr. Chair. You mentioned the opportunity cost, and as we all know, the opportunity cost are the things you cannot do once you decide what you are going to do. And you mentioned health care for homeless. So have you looked at other models of how health care for homeless is provided, and are you sure this is not something that could be done concurrently?
Commissioner Berney, I'll respond to that question. We are actively involved with Poverty and Homeless Board and are engaged in the work looking at a variety of different ways to help serve the homeless. We currently serve a very large percentage of the homeless population. We're looking at different options. This would be concurrent work. I think Ron's point is that if we were to choose to, say, take a much more aggressive or sort of a capital-laden approach to that work, that may be delayed. Our work is to care for the population that we serve in whatever capacity we need to do. We're looking at case management. We're looking at a greater partnership with our housing colleagues, use of the dovetail and fuse programs, a whole variety of other things that are already in place. We have no intention of moving back from that, and we'll continue to progress with that work. I think to take on a bigger bite, so to speak, it could, we looked at mobile services, we've looked at a variety of other things that may delay that. And again, Ron's pointing out the possible delays related to those opportunities.
Thank you. And I only mentioned it because I heard that as one of the potential opportunity costs. And I just want to reiterate, well, that's great. And my last question relates to, well, I won't ask that question. Are you asking for any decisions about resource commitments from this board before we know what this the new lay of the land with CCOs is in Lane County?
Thank you, Chair Sorensen. Commissioner Berney, I appreciate the clear and specific question. Right now, we are not asking for any resource commitments. I would anticipate that in the not too distant future, if the general direction we get today is to continue to pursue this project, that there may be an opportunity for us to apply for some grants on behalf of the project and obligate in that way that we are sponsoring the project moving forward. At this point, the resource commitments I would see from the board are around our staff time and strategic bandwidth, which we were just talking about that piece, and then an acknowledgement that those losses in the first several years would be expected that we would cover those, and that would be out of the community health centers contingency funds, and we would cover those losses in that way. So I don't anticipate asking for a general fund commitment or resources in that way. It's more giving us the go-ahead that this is more important than some of the other things we might be looking for in the next year or two.
Well, reciprocally, I also appreciate your direct answer. Thank you very much.
Okay, Commissioner Bozievich.
Thank you. First, I want to say I'm excited about all the opportunities, representing the Crow Applegate Lorraine School District. The whole southern half of the district actually could potentially access this clinic, and just knowing, one of my largest concerns that gets raised throughout my district is rural health care. That said, Commissioner Wet Blanket's going to be at it again. So just I'm going to walk through a couple questions here, and there's a point to them. Does the county or the providers in our CHCs carry medical malpractice insurance?
Chair Sorensen, Commissioner Bozievich, the way that federally qualified health centers are organized, our employees, our physicians are employees of the county, and so the county covers any of that insurance, and as long as employees are operating within the scope of our federally qualified health center and within their approved job responsibilities, we would expect that the Federal Tort Claims Act would cover that malpractice. And then we do purchase a gap policy.
I bring that up because currently we're involved in some litigation, which I'm going to be trying careful not specifically talk about, But in that litigation, the federal government is refusing to hold us harmless and represent us as part of the Federal Tort Claims Act relative to a malpractice claim. Not involving our CHCs, involving another part of Lane County medical care provision. To me, this is a sign of a humongous liability risk. So as we expand CHCs, we're expanding that particular risk to the county. And I'm not talking $1.8 million. You're aware of the suit, it far exceeds 1.8 million. So I just want to bring that up, that as we consider expanding CHCs, I think I can't support this till I know that the federal government's going to honor the Federal Tort Claims Act. You know, for me, it's just a risk too big to take anymore. So in addition to that, one of the things I'm really concerned about is if our employees at CHCs bargain for additional pay, does the compensation we get for the care they provide change, or is that revenue fixed by the federal government?
Chair Sorensen, Commissioner Bozievich, the amount we receive in reimbursement is not directly changed by the costs of our compensation system.
Thank you. As I point out, and as we just adopted a mid-market change for ASME today, and we've had mid-market change for ASME nurses last year, and we're currently in negotiations with another unit that impacts the cost of these clinics. Our rising costs are not tied to our revenue at all, and our revenue doesn't seem to be increasing on the federal side. The other risk I feel that really wasn't outlined here is a legislative risk. We expanded Medicare in Oregon. We took that option here with initial funding by the federal government that was declining, and making up that federal amount has been a real issue for Oregon. And I know that part of where they're making that up is in this new economic activities tax that was passed. That is going to end up on the ballot, I'm pretty sure. And whether that actually passes, seeing it was defeated as Measure 97 pretty soundly, is at risk. I think there's an extreme risk in the Medicare expansion funding from the state that's also unclear to me. You know, this is beyond, you know, the 1.8 million startup costs. You know, we have this issue of, are we truly covered for liability? You know, are we at huge risk there? Are our revenues tied in any way to our expenses? And do we have control over those reimbursement rates? No, we don't. Are we in control of the Medicare expansion dollars and all that? So to me, there's these huge risks in expanding our CHC system. As much as we need medical care and mental health care in our rural areas, until I have clear answers on a couple of those questions, I see this as there's too much downside to balance that opportunity list. So for me, I want to hear back. I need definitive answers from the federal government on whether they're going to honor the federal tort claim, which, you know, we've got motions in courts right now to try and answer that, but that has not been resolved. I'd like to understand if there's going to be any ties between our costs and reimbursements from Medicaid, which are controlled by the federal government. You know, I'd like to understand if there's a true commitment and other sources of revenue that don't depend on votes of the citizens that the state's identified for Medicaid expansion. So to me, those are risks bigger than trying to put together $1.8 million for capital cost. Beyond the fact that I'd also like to find out what the heck's happening with CCO 2.0. You know, to me, I think the state's playing a very risky game, looking at multiple providers in a CCO area. You know, here we had our, you know, for-profit CCO provide, you know, $2 million for expansion of clinics. It seemed to be working pretty well here in Lane County, and we're monkeying with a system that's worked. So at this time, I can't say charge on. I feel there's too much risk existing in the current climate. Maybe a month or two from now, some of those questions will be answered. But that's where I am today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't think Commissioner Berney did enough on this whole Bobby Green thing, so I need to mention a few things. First of all, I am not the biggest football fan in the world, but I did go to a lot of football games when Commissioner Green, then linebacker Bobby Green, and he played on 4 U of O teams, not 1 U of O football team. Secondly, after his time with the Duck football, he was on the Eugene City Council for a number of years, very involved in the community, especially from his area, and then got on this board. And we would not even be sitting here today without his leadership on the Community Health Center program. I really appreciate your leadership, Bobby. I know Bill Dwyer also played a big role in that, but I know you played a huge role in it. And after his service on our board here, he went to the Oregon Health Authority, and in the context of local government relations, so I think he's here to watch us as well and help us. And in case you had not noticed from his visor and shirt there, he's a big New Orleans Saints fan, still wearing the New Orleans Saints outfit. By the way, Dan Fouts was in college with me. He played on that football team with Bobby Green, went on pro football. Anyway, I just want to mention, thank you, Mr. Green, Commissioner Green, for being here and providing that service in terms of local government with the Oregon Health Authority, and especially given this project. It's a great project. So as far as my comments, number one, I want to move forward. I think that the commissioners from the East Lane District that you've worked with, from Commissioner Buck to Commissioner Williams to Commissioner Stewart, back even to Commissioner Wheeldryer, very supportive of all this work. And I just want to say that the one thing I was listening for in this presentation was market share. Like, are there enough people there? Are there enough people that need health care there? And the answer apparently is most assuredly yes, because of the data that you've gotten from Trillium and the data that you've got from your own sources for people who are served. In terms of the liability issue that was brought up earlier, that is a big issue for Lane County. And I think it was last week or the week before, I brought up the need for a work session on liability insurance, not just for your branch of the world, but also for lots of other people who are nervous about being sued in their jobs and for doing their jobs. So liability insurance is certainly an issue. I think that's really a component of, liability problems in society, not specific to whether we should have or not have a health clinic in Cottage Grove. And I think it is a separate issue. Obviously, it's a cost, so that's a factor. But we do have some control over our costs in revenue, because we do set revenue. We do an annual budget for our costs. So I don't think it's fair to say, oh, we have no control. Well, we don't have as much control as we'd like. We'd like the federal government to sign on the dotted line and say they're going to give us X dollars per year, inflation adjusted, at our whim. But we're not going to get that. So I think the proper phrase isn't your individual results may vary, or some other brokerage ad. It's more like past is prologue. I mean, what do we know? We know that it's been working. We know that we've been doing a good job. So I'm in favor of moving forward. I am interested in knowing the zeroing in on the liability costs. I'd like to know what that is and what your projection is for it in the context of these community health centers. And I think that the buy-in from the state, the buy-in from the federal government, the buy-in from Oregon Community Foundation, and I know Commissioner Farr served in the House with Mr. Williams, and Mr. Williams and I also worked together. He was the staff to the Senate Judiciary Committee when I was in the legislature. Very bright guy, very well connected in state government circles, and that relationship that Commissioner Farr talked about is very important in terms of getting a buy-in from the components of Oregon Community Foundation. So I don't see this as a big decision point, but I do see it as a go, no-go. Are we going to do any more? And the answer is yes, we're clearly going to move. I believe the proper thing is we're going to move in that direction. Can we get some solar energy on this building?
Anything's possible.
Okay. Thank you so much. Any further comments from board? Yeah, Commissioner?
Ever so briefly, and I just wanted to thank you, Dr. Kincaid, for your work with the Poverty and Homelessness Board. You're tireless. You chair a committee that meets pretty regularly with a very aggressive agenda to address some of the questions that Commissioner Berney hinted toward. But you're doing a lot more as far as making certain that we are able to provide health care to the people who least are able to afford it or access it. Thank you very much for that work.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that. And Ms. Moody, you're here. So let's go back to the budget. Maybe we can finish that. It's item 7, I'll call it 7A, and that is we're going to talk first about the motion the board wants to entertain regarding direction on the O&C funding. And then we'll call up item 7B, which was 7A, and that will be the order on adopting the budget. That seem like one way to go? Yes. Okay. So Commissioner Farr, I'll just call on you for your motion that the board is authorized. So go ahead.
Well, we are reconsidering the motion. We passed 3-1 that we would reconsider the motion that passed 4-1 last week to eliminate funding from this year's budget for OACC. And I don't have an argument one way or the other whether we should or should not eliminate it ultimately. I just don't think that this is the time to eliminate it. I believe that based upon some information that I received regarding the 2009 board order that was passed and the performance of OACC since that point in time, we have received conflicting testimony. And most of us have heard nothing more than the testimony regarding the activity of Oregon Association of the Association of Oregon California Counties. I've never attended one of their meetings. I don't know what their agendas are typically. I was at the very beginning of one maybe 5 years ago. So I, for one, would need to hear more regarding what are the benefits that they provided. We've heard testimony unsubstantiated that they provide benefits. We've heard testimony unsubstantiated that they are a detriment to a number of different issues in Lane County. I would like to hear more about it. I'd like to have a deliberative process that involved somebody more neutral, that involved a staff presentation on our historical involvement with OACC. Not people who are in favor of staying in the organization, not people who want us out of the organization, but people who can give us more of a historical context on how the organization has performed. That's the reason for my motion. It's not that I disagree with anything that's said.
Just state your motion then.
The motion that's on the table. We are reconsidering the motion that was made by Commissioner Buck and seconded by Commissioner Berney for discussion. Okay. Was the second at the June 11th board meeting.
Okay, very good. And so I don't know what the proper procedure is, but let's assume that the second on the original motion agrees to this, or maybe we should have a second on your motion to reconsider.
The rules would indicate that this is on the table right now. All we need is a vote.
Okay, yes, all we need is a vote. So are there any comments and further on the motion? Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you, and I appreciate the Commissioner Berney supporting bringing this back up for discussion again today. I wanted to just bring a couple things to light that I think have changed since last week, and also some things that I would like to propose that the board do no matter which direction this vote goes. First, I was able to contact Chair, the President of the association, Commissioner Tim Freeman from Douglas County, and also talked with Rocky Mave, their executive director, about opening up, the portions of the meeting that wouldn't be what we wouldn't normally consider
Is there any further comment on the motion before the board, which was the motion made last week to cut off the funding for AOCC? Commissioner Berney.
I absolutely agree with the need to spend time and dig deeper. Void of that at the board level, I've done, for me, an exhaustive amount of that. We have heard conflicting information, we've heard conflicting data, and we've heard emotional voices. I personally know BLM's ONC lands are managed in environmentally friendlier ways than on a lot of private industrial timberland. I think to conflate the two and by association demonize AOCC is misleading, untruthful, and divisive. Conversely, to say that a vote to place a pause on Lane County's membership is anti-forestry or anti-jobs or anti-rural in any way, that harvests won't occur or that the county might lose its timber receipts, in my opinion, from what I know, is equally misleading, untruthful, and divisive. My issue is with this type of messaging, because it is the opposite of genuinely trying to find common ground and work on critical issues together, which is why I ran in the first place. I want Lane County and organizations with clear transparency, nonpartisan representation, and that are perceived as inclusive and open to public participation and input. I think it's insightful that the overwhelming majority of emails I received, Mr. Chair, on this issue suggest, right or wrong, correct or not, a huge number of our county residents feel ignored by big government, trampled on by big business, and see AOCC as a private organization using public money to lobby for private interests. It's a perception. That perception can and should be dealt with. I think it's easy. If an organization is funded exclusively with taxpayer dollars, it should follow Oregon Open Public Meetings law, so voices are not quelled, but given a chance to be heard. I think that would deal with a lot of this. Also moving forward, though, I have to say, I don't want the county, and now I'm speaking symbols because I don't see this as a business decision. I don't want the county complicit with any group that actively or indirectly advocates dismantling environmental protection legislation, some of which goes clear back to the Clean Fuel, Clean Water, and Clean Air Acts of the Nixon administration. I disagree, my own personal opinion, I disagree with the previous board's decision to contribute county taxpayer money to sue the federal government to diminish the Cascade-Siskiyou National Monument. To diminish the Cascade-Siskiyou National Monument. I didn't say park.
No, but sorry, I'm just.
Oh, no, it's okay. I'm just making my statement. I am for the preservation of national parks. I just think called America's best idea, so that our children and our children's children can behold with awe and wonder, and for the last vestiges of pristine ecosystems to hopefully stay intact and function as nature intended. And I honestly believe we are in a time where we have to pull together as communities to be more self-reliant and on alert for the real possibility that our most valuable asset, our quality of life, is under assault. We can take nothing for granted, as nearly every day we wake up to news that either through administrative dismantling of laws and protections or the effects of climate change at home and abroad, the world as we know it is changing, in some places overnight. We cannot assume that we will always have the beauty and resources of the natural world to utilize, to enjoy, unless we're vigilant and progressive in both thought and action. Of course, counties need substantive, sustainable, ecologically defendable timber harvests. Guess what? So do timber companies. But counties need more than that. Our counties now need diversified revenue sources and stop putting all our eggs in one basket. So, my final statement, either way, the sky will not fall. AOCC will continue its work. President Freeman, who has my respect, is a strong leader and has contingencies in place to keep AOCC whole. Lane County will continue to receive its share of timber receipts, and timber harvests will continue. Here's where I absolutely agree with Commissioner Farr and Commissioner Bozievich. I believe Lane County should support Senator Wyden's SRS replacement legislation, should publicly conduct the work sessions we have talked about, should hear expert testimony, ask hard questions, reflect deeper on where we are and what has brought us here, and above all, learn more, tell the truth, and respect one another in the process. That's how I feel. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, anything further from commissioners on the motion?
Just a clarification, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Farr, then Commissioner Bozievich.
That a yes vote withdraws the funding for AOCC from the budget.
A yes vote, in my view, a yes vote continues the current motion which cut the money for AOCC out of the Lane County budget. A no vote on this motion is to say no, that we want to continue the funding, and as was in the approved budget that is before the board today.
That's a revote from the last.
It's a revote from the last vote.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I also agree about revisiting it in 6 months.
Okay.
So I just, I appreciate Commissioner Berney's discussion about emotion and misinformation, but if I could just correct one piece of information that you wrapped into your statement that is not accurate. The lawsuit about the Cascade-Siskiyou National Monument is not against the expansion. It's against not being compensated for the lands taken from the O&C counties that was wrapped into that monument, and requesting that they provide an equal amount of public lands acreage-wise, similar to what they did when they established some lands for the Confederated Tribes of the Lower Umpqua and Siuslaw Indians as part of an act of Congress, and they set those lands aside that were partially ONC lands. They provided acres in balance of the acreage that was set aside for the Indian tribes. That's what the lawsuit's about. It's being demonized by being qualified that we were against the monument. No, it's against the expansion without compensation for the lands they took.
I apologize.
So I just want to make sure that's clear.
I was trying to think of an analogy getting ready for today, and I didn't want to really repeat what I'd said before, but I was thinking about an organization of cities, say 12 to 14 cities, and it was headed by Kitty Piercy, the mayor of Eugene, the then mayor of Eugene. And this organization was composed of these Democratic women that really believed strongly in protecting the environment. And the cities that formed this organization said, man, it's really important that we form an organization that's going to advocate for these cities. And so they all went together and they said, yeah, it's a good idea. But there were people on the outside that said, wait a minute, we have a different view of the environment and we don't agree. And we think that you should be different. And then the group said, you know, we've got our Republican congressman who votes the wrong way, and we're really against what they do, and we want to have a voice in your organization, you know, and the women controlling the organization would say, yeah, you keep funding our organization. We're opposite what the congressman does. You can have a place at the table. And so wait a minute, and then several of these Democratic women that were controlling the organization, they ran against the Republican congressman. 3 of them, 2 board members and 1 of their staff members. They ran against the people of the opposite side. And somehow this is what we have with the AOCC. That's exactly what we have. You have 2 board members right now that have run against Congressman Fazio and 1 staff person who ran against Congressman Weaver. We have very little representation on the other side. And if this motion is defeated and we don't cut off the funding, then what we will see is a continuation of what we had. And I don't agree with that. I think it's bad. And I also think it's bad to fully put all the money in if we're really serious about revisiting something. So I'll just say I'm in favor of the motion to cut off the funding for AOCC.
Okay.
Yeah, we can have additional debate too. Go ahead.
Is that okay? I just also, I have poor eyesight, so I want to acknowledge a gentleman here named, and I hope I'm not embarrassing you, named Chris Cadwell. And just to sort of one side, other side here, we really ought to be working together. And in my opinion, Mr. Cadwell, who is an ex-BLM forester and works with AOCC, has taken hours upon hours to educate me about the context, the implications, and really lays out a vision that I need to understand better, but as I understand it, is a quote-unquote happy story. It in fact, is a vision I may subscribe to. So I really just, however I vote here, I think you know how I will vote. I'm open for revisiting, and I want to acknowledge that one of AOCC's staff has spent a lot of time educating me, and I'm very appreciative, sir.
Okay, further comments?
So I'm not sure if folks are aware of all the associations we pay dues to. I asked this question last time. Our total membership dues in fiscal year 16-17, we paid to multiple organizations, and this does not include the ONC counties, AOC, and a couple others that show up on our budget, was over $470,000. And a couple of those organizations include organizations that do lobby and take positions on bills in Salem and capital and Washington D.C., including the Oregon District Attorneys Association. And I don't think all the portions of their meetings are open to the public, and I don't know if our public would agree with every stance the DAs take. In fact, we've disagreed with stances the DAs take as a board. Recently, we disagreed with the stance the DAs took as a board. But we pay those dues because there's benefit in being a member of that association for our district attorney. We pay $40,000 a year to be a member of health. Dang, I lost the reference. Sorry, the National Association of Community Health Centers. We have organization after organization where we pay anywhere from $40 to $79,000, 400 and whatever it is, that we do, and well past that to AOC. I just want to remind us that, if we're going to have a discussion and the issue is about public meetings or not, and whether or not we always agree with every stance an organization takes, we need to take a serious look at that list of basically, once you add in the ones that are also included in budgets, over $500,000 in public tax money going to outside organizations. It's one of the reasons why the list was developed, was to try and get an understanding of how much we're paying in dues across the entire organization. I hope, folks will support staying within AOC and support a look in 6 months. I would even be supportive if we only paid half the dues at this time in the budget. But I do believe, either way we go, we need to have the budget note that requires a revisit in 6 months. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I thought we were ready to vote. Commissioner Farr?
And you've kind of mischaracterized my reason for bringing this back for a reconsideration. Really, we've heard publicly from people who have an opinion, a dog in the fight, so to speak. We have not heard from the people on staff who've worked on this for a long time. I understand, for instance, Mr. Mokrasi, I do believe that Alex Kyler wrote the 2009 board order that's been discussed a number of times regarding AOCC, and we've not heard from him.
That's correct.
And we've not heard publicly from staff regarding the answers to the questions that have been raised by both sides, providing the commentary that we've received over the last few weeks. So that's my reason for asking for a reconsideration and asking to change the vote, is so that we can have that presentation before we make what is a more informed decision.
But, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
With all due respect, my good friend.
All due respect means without respect. Thank you.
With all due respect, you are proposing a decision. And I'm agreeing with you on the process we need to take, 100%. I've learned from staff that they've just, Mr. Kyler's been exhausted. He can't believe 5 places at one time, and we haven't been able to have that. I think we all agree with we need the process. But there's a decision I didn't want to make, frankly, that we're forced to, because it's a budget decision. So, and I also have to say, and I've said to Commissioner Bozievich, I wish he wouldn't tamper with my opinions by facts. And I'm responding to something that was in the budget that I'm aware of. But in all honesty, I'm not aware of all those groups, and I do believe that we're going to need to be consistent as we make decisions moving forward.
Okay, so I believe that a yes vote is to cut off the funding for AOCC. A no vote is to restore the funding to AOCC unless there's some other motion. So let's vote on the reconsidered motion. And so the yes vote is to cut off the funding. A no vote is to maintain the funding. All those in favor of the motion as presented, say aye. Aye. All those opposed to the motion, say no.
No.
Okay, the vote is 3-2 to cut off the funding. And we'll now move to item 7B. Before we do that, I'd like to ask the commissioners what their sense is for this exhausting day, because we have our nice folks from Admin Pro over there waiting for their short item. We have a need for lunch. We have a 1:30 work session, although it's not specifically time certain, but I'd like to try to come back by 1:30, so I'll just take the temperature of the board on this.
Chair, I'm available through lunch, but I would say that we did not complete action on the budget.
No, we did not.
Yeah,
I agree.
so there's still, that we just took that one motion up. So I just want to make sure you're aware we still have more to do on 7A.
Exactly. We do. Is there any other objection to moving forward or taking our Admin Pro item now, or going through the budget?
For the items I mentioned earlier about something called diabetes, I can't go beyond 12:30, just to let you know. And I also need to say that, and I'm sorry, Pete, I object to the phrase of cutting off. I think what we voted to do was to not, at this moment, pay dues to AOCC. And I think that there's also a general desire to learn more, and after learning more, revisit.
Okay. Okay, so can you guys come back at 1:30?
I can stay till 12:30.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Just, I think that if you're able to wrap up the budget, I know there were a couple other discussions in the next 5 or 10 minutes. While we agendize the item for Admin Pro for 30 minutes, it won't take that long. The presentation will be brief. I don't expect a lot of discussion questions, although we'll see. And given the fact that we have staff here and Mr. Daniels is here, if you're able to take it, I think we can get through it before 12:30.
Thank you.
Okay, why don't we do this? Let's take their item right now. That way, we know they're done, and then we will work on the budget till we have to leave. Okay, so at this time, we will call up our item 10A, the order 19-06-18-10, in the matter of approving the tentative agreement between Lane County and the Administrative Professionals Association of Lane County, Inc. With us to discuss this is our County Administrator, Steve Mokrahysky, Alana Holmes, the Human Resources Director, Inga Wood, our Labor Relations Manager, and if you could also identify our representative from the Administrative Professionals Association of Lane County, Inc., that would be helpful too.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair Sorensen and Commissioners, and we do have Ed Daniels, the Admin Pro President, here with us.
Mr. Daniels, you want to come up to the table? Thank you so much for coming.
So we are happy to present to you today the tentative agreement between the Lane County and the Administrative Professional Association of Lane County, Inc., also known as Admin Pro. The current collective bargaining agreement between Lane County and Admin Pro expires on June 30th, 2019. The bargaining teams participated in successor contract negotiations and through that process have reached a tentative agreement for a successor contract. The teams worked in a collaborative manner to concentrate on recruitment and retention as it relates to market competitiveness, while keeping focused on overall budget constraints and maintaining a commitment to the Lane County strategic plan. We were able to address many concerns and aspects of the contract in just 4 short bargaining sessions. This speaks to the trust and collaborative relationship the county and the association has built over the years. The board is being asked to approve the proposed 3-year successor agreement ending June 30th, 2022, which is included in your packet. There's also a brief summary of the proposed changes in the packet, so I won't go into great detail about those changes, but just want to highlight a few. In July 2019, we'll do market adjustments for employees in this group by dropping the first 2 steps from the compensation scale and moving employees to the closest step without a decrease. Employees on step 1 and step 2 will have their merit dates then reset. And for those employees who do not receive at least a 0.5% increase with that market adjustment, they will receive a one-time payment of $450. The tentative agreement provides a 1.5% cost of living adjustment for year 1 of the agreement, which is fiscal year 1920, a 2% cost of living adjustment for year 2 of the agreement, fiscal year 2021, and a 2% cost of living adjustment for the third year of the agreement, 21-22. The health insurance plans and employee monthly contributions will remain unchanged. However, we have added the option for a health reimbursement arrangement, so more employees will be able to take advantage of the high deductible health plan that we have here at the county. We made numerous changes to clarify some contract language. That was a heavy lift. I'm really appreciative of that. The total estimated cost for the proposed contract changes is approximately $1.6 million over the 3-year contract period. The employees in this bargaining unit provide services within Public Works and Technology Services departments in the areas of roads, solid waste, event center, public land corners preservation, technology and fleet services, and facilities and parks. I really want to thank the bargaining team members for both the county and Admin Pro, specifically Ed Daniels, the president, Jeremy Shearer, and Dina Macon from Admin Pro, and then Lance Inglet, Peggy Kepler, Kristen Mayfair, and Valerie Sanchez from the county team. And I also want to thank Jeff Orlandini, Oren Schumacher, Andrea Nagels, Christine Moody, and Joe Celesta for providing support and information so that we could get these contract negotiations done. The ratification of this contract is in alignment with the county's strategic priority, our people and partnerships, to provide a safe, healthy, and inclusive work environment that attracts and retains a diverse, highly skilled workforce with a deeply embedded commitment to delivering value and service to the residents of Lane County through fiscal resilience and partnerships. Admin Pro bargaining unit members have voted to ratify the tentative agreement, and the county's bargaining team recommends the approval of the tentative agreement. The county staff are ready to implement the tentative agreement upon the board's approval. And I'm open to questions, and I'm sure Mr. Daniels, if you have any for us.
Are there any questions from commissioners? Okay. No? Yes? Go ahead.
Just a quick comment. I just want to thank the folks in Admin Pro and Ed. You've been a great partner with the county over the years, the 8 years I've been here. Your unit has stepped up time and time again to help us resolve budget issues and cost issues, from moving to new healthcare plans to the VSIP program you all participated in. I just can't tell you what a great partnership it's been with your unit, and I just want to thank you for that cooperative working relationship that we've had over the years. It's been just really rewarding to work with you all. And if I was back in my regular profession, I'd probably be a member of your unit.
Okay, anything further? Well, then, at this time, I'll accept a motion to approve the order 19-02-18-10.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Commissioner Bozievich, second by Commissioner Buck, to approve the order as presented. I just want to say thank you so much, not only to the county staff that helped represent the administration in the process of the negotiations leading up to the tentative agreement, about to be agreement, and also to Mr. Daniels, and not only you, but also all the folks that work with you and that your association represents. We really appreciate your dedication and the dedication of all the folks that are represented here. So at this time, we'll move to a vote on this order, and we'll move to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no, and the motion carries 5-0, and the order is adopted. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, we'll go back to our budget item, and as I understand it, we've dealt with the motion that was voted on last week and then just recently revoted. I don't believe there are any other changes that need to be made to the order as presented, but at this time, I'll now read order and resolution 19-06-1802.
Chair
Yeah.
Sorensen, before we get to that,
Yeah.
can I propose a couple additional amendments?
Well, why don't you propose the amendments to the budget
Okay.
as
I'll do
part
that
of that?
Thank you. I just want to make sure we
Yeah,
had the procedure.
absolutely. So order resolution 19-06-18-02 in the matter of adopting the 2018-19 Lane County budget, making appropriations and imposing and categorizing taxes. Christine.
2019.
Oh, did I read that, Ryan?
Budget.
Oh,
Yeah.
restate that.
2019-20 Lane County budget. Okay, thank you. Making appropriations, imposing taxes, and categorizing taxes. And with us to discuss this item is Christine Moody. We have the adopted budget that we gave direction to modify last week. Thus far, that hasn't been changed, but it could be. And at this time, I'll call on your presentation, and then I'll call on Commissioner Buck.
I need to declare.
Yeah, okay. At appropriate time, maybe this is appropriate time. Why don't you go ahead and make your declaration?
I know that we're talking about the budget for next year. It includes items regarding the TAC report, so I just wanted to declare a potential conflict of interest as I am related to the Executive Director of St. Vincent de Paul, who in that agency could be affected by the budget that we make today. I don't think it's actual conflict of interest in this particular situation, so I will vote along with my fellow commissioners.
Okay, very good. So, Ms. Moody, please let us know if there's any other changes since last week and anything else you want to say about this matter.
Thank you, Chair Sorensen, members of the board. So I do just have one technical change that has changed since you last saw it, and then I'll turn it over to the county administrator to make some final comments on the budget. There was one fund that on final review would have changed by more than 10% from the budget committee's approval. That legally cannot happen. That would be a budget violation. So it's the Corners Fund. It's a fairly small fund, so it wasn't a large change. It was a couple $100,000. But so we have reduced that amount of change to keep it under the 10% rule. So that's a change on the third sheet of the adjustments to the approved, but other than that, no other changes have occurred.
Very good.
And Mr. Chair, I just would make some brief wrap-up comments. I've appreciated your tutorial for the public in particular, where you talk about the 4 steps in this process: the proposed budget that the county administrator presents to the budget committee, the approved budget that the budget committee takes action on, the adopted budget, which is what you're now considering taking action on, and then supplemental budgets, which you previously today, where you are amending that process. So this is a critical step in that, and this is, I found to be rather typical at this stage of the game. We work through this process over the course of a couple months, and then you get down to the nitty-gritty pieces, and I want to just reflect upon the fact that you are approving $716 million in taxpayer resources as part of the fiscal year budget that begins in 2 weeks. And we, again, for the 3rd year in a row, have a structurally balanced budget that all 32 of our funds are structurally balanced without the use of reserves, which means that we're not burning through our savings account to pay for the services that are required for this community. Our revenues equal our expenses, and we also have not had to make any reductions in critical areas, no layoffs, no reductions in services. And we proposed a number of enhancements to areas that are consistent with the strategic priorities and goals that this Board of Commissioners has established, particularly in the area of housing and homelessness, in public safety and health services. So we have the $1 million allocation for a new behavioral crisis center. We have additional investments in reducing poverty and homelessness in our community through the implementation of the TAC report. We have investments in emergency management and preparedness, investments and enhancements in our park assets that generate new revenue and provide additional assets for our community. And the list goes on and on. But I want to thank the commissioners and the citizen members of the Budget Committee for their great work, to our staff throughout the organization who have participated in preparing these budgets and in bringing forward suggestions and ideas for how we can be thoughtful in investing resources and really acting upon our core behaviors of a passion to serve, a drive to connect, and focused on solutions. And so we're pleased that the board is here to take action on the adopted budget. Certainly, if you have any questions, we're here for that, but I just wanted to provide some of that broader context and recognize that while we focused on a few key pieces, individual pieces, that this is a large action. I think one of the most significant actions that the Board of Commissioners in our organization takes every year. This is where the money meets the road, if you will, where we're putting the resources behind the words that we've said are priorities for our community. Thank you.
Okay, so if there's additional items, maybe we could take them up under a motion to approve the budget as presented, and then make other motions if people want to make other motions. So, Commissioner Buck.
I'll move to approve item 7, which is now 7B, I understand. Order Resolution 19-06-18-02 as presented.
Okay, there's a motion to approve the budget as presented. Is there a second? Okay, I will second the motion. Any further debate on the motion?
Chair.
Yep.
So I have two amendments I'd like to propose separately because they're unrelated. The first is I move to amend the budget to add a budget note that a 6-month review of our membership in AOCC will take place.
Second.
Okay, it's been, I need to back up, was the original motion was made by Commissioner Buck and seconded by me, Commissioner Sorensen. Now we have a amendment or motion on the table. We now have an amended motion. That amended motion is to have a budget note that, and I'll let you finish the rest of that sentence.
That we have a 6-month review of our membership in AOCC.
And we have a 6-month review of AOCC membership. Okay. So is there so Commissioner Bozievich makes this motion. Is there a second?
I seconded that.
Okay, very good. So Commissioner Bozievich, please go forward, then Commissioner Buck.
I'll just note, I stated my reasons earlier in the meeting. I would have made this motion regardless of how the motion about funding the dues went, because I think it's important for us to have that built in as a budget note that this body will come back in 6 months and review that decision. Either way it was going to be made.
Okay.
That's what a budget note will allow us to do.
Okay. Are you okay with having a vote on that now before we?
Yeah, I mean, it's
okay.
yeah.
Further discussion on Commissioner Bozivich's motion to have an annual budget note that we'll revisit or have a report on the AOCC. Commissioner Buck.
I just want to state that I think a budget note on this item is inappropriate. I think that if we want to come back and reconsider this item in the future, that we can do that during agenda setting and future work sessions to talk about this. I think the budget stated and is appropriate as it's currently written.
Okay. Further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. This vote is on the motion to have a budget note as described by Commissioner Bozievich. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, please say no.
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 I didn't vote.
What is your vote?
I didn't vote because I was trying to say something before you called the
Oh, okay. Go ahead and vote.
Can I say something?
Go ahead and say something.
I apologize.
That's okay.
Thank you. I ultimately, having heard Commissioner Buck, I agree. So there's nothing that precludes us from bringing this up at any point.
This just binds us.
This binds us. Know that I'm someone that's ready to do that, at the right time, to revisit. Because really the issue is going to be, I think, two things. One is that we get through the process of learning that we've all talked about, and so we need to make an intentional effort to do that and to have those work sessions and public testimony and what have you. And I think that the other relates to seeing that the AOCC has heard us and is behaving consistent with some of the things that we said in terms of openness. So I just want to say that's the reason I'm going to vote I don't know whether it's for or against at this point, but, pardon me?
We'll probably revote.
But that's why I would request, but I couldn't vote until I got that out.
Okay.
Because I don't want to be bound, but I also want to publicly state I will want to revisit as soon as we can.
Does anyone else want to make any comments before we take the vote on the amended motion? Okay, so it's, this is a vote on the motion by Commissioner Bozievich, second by Commissioner Farr, to add a budget note to our budget. And all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no.
No.
The motion is defeated by a vote of 3-2. Voting yes, Commissioners Bozievich and Farr. Voting yes are Commissioner Bozievich and Farr. Voting no, Commissioners Buck, Sorensen, and Berney. Commissioner Bozievich, do you want to make another budget amendment? Or are we done with the amendment?
Yeah, I had one other I wanted to, which was another budget note I wanted to add.
Okay.
And I want to explain this a little bit. The subcommittee on Public Safety of Ways and Means adopted the Department of Corrections budget recommendation to the full Ways and Means Committee at a level of funding that I believe triggers the opt-out, which, if you remember Senate Bill 1145, Commissioner Sorensen, you were there, I think, when it was passed. When we took on supervision of felons here in Lane County for the state, it was based on a certain minimum level of funding. In addition to getting below the opt-out, they completely ignored a piece of that bill, which was every 6 years they're supposed to do a study on the actual cost of supervision, which they funded $50 million below that actual cost of supervision. I think it's appropriate this time for us to place a budget note in our budget that says if that is not changed and they fund the current proposal, that we will notify the state that we plan to opt out of providing parole and probation services at the end of this budget cycle. Because I can't.
You can state your motion.
Yeah. So I would move that we add a budget note that if the state provides the current proposed funding for the Community Corrections Act, that we opt out of providing parole and probation services at the end of the fiscal 19-20 budget.
2020?
Yeah, the fiscal 2019-2020 budget. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, seconded. Discussion, Commissioner Bozievich?
Like I said, the state is pushing costs down to the counties. In addition to underfunding the Community Corrections Act, they pulled $4.5 million of court fines that normally come to counties. And they also added a new fee for our DA to pay every time they file a case in district court. Every felony and misdemeanor is going to have a fee, and the estimate on the cost of that new fee is $111,000 in the first year. That's at least a half an FTE in the DA's office. So they're underfunding community corrections. They took back court fines that came to the county, and they're requesting our DAs to start paying fees to the courts to file cases on behalf of the state. Remember the first three words the DA says in court: the state charges, not Lane County. And I think it's time that we basically said to the state legislature, fund community corrections at the time study, or you guys can have the service back and figure out how you're going to pay for it.
Let's do this. I want to do this on that we're over our 12:30. So let's just take our recess. We'll come back at 1:30. We'll start up with the budget. And Mr. Mokrice, you can let the folks that were scheduled to come in at 1:30 to let them know that we probably will take them a little later after we finish the budget. Okay, so we're in recess till 1:30.